over on the vibrant Gaia continent. Monsters have been mysteriously vanishing. For several years now at first, people thought these creatures were just going extinct. But surprise, surprise. They were actually being whisked away to another dimension, and this twist is precisely what one particular mage had been hoping to uncover. All along, this mage has spent ages studying the sudden monster exodus, though he's still clueless as to the why and how of their interdimensional trips. Instead, his real focus is on how he can harness this power. For himself, you see, after gathering every scrap of research he could find, he finally set up a magic circle deep within a dungeon called the Great Labyrinth. Now, with all his work coming to fruition, he sets the coordinates, channels his mana, and steps onto the magic circle, ready for the grand leap to another world. A brilliant light flares up around him as the spell takes effect, illuminating everything in a radiant aura. Then in a blink, everything goes still and confused. The mage realizes that while the air feels different and the temperature is off, he's not in another dimension after all. Nope, he's still outside the dungeon. Or rather, the entire dungeon has been transported to another dimension, leaving him stuck in a hole where the dungeon used to be. Meanwhile, in a different dimension, a young man stands in his attic, gaping at the interdimensional portal that suddenly popped up before him. Up until a few seconds ago, his day was pretty ordinary. Kong Janik had been going about his work, observing the bustling college students around him, feeling a twinge of nostalgia for the days when he, too, had passion and purpose. Nowadays, though, as a daring hunter, he doesn't exactly have the luxury of career dreams. His co-worker snaps him back to reality, reminding him about the task, that they're only halfway through their exhausting workload, and there is absolutely no time for standing around. After a truly grueling day, the two men finally get some rest in their van. Oddly, Jinhook is barely bundled up at all, despite the incredibly chilly weather outside. It turns out one amazing perk of being a hunter, no matter how low your ranking might be, is having an enhanced tolerance to extreme temperatures, saving him a nice chunk of change on his heating bill. Sure, hunters enjoy some truly nifty perks, but our hero Jinhook is still slogging it out in low-paying part-time labor jobs. But why? Because he is absolutely flat broke. And with all the big guilds monopolizing every hunter gig, there is not much he can possibly do about it. A local serial killer has been absolutely wreaking havoc, relentlessly targeting powerful hunters from top guilds. And now those powerful guilds are greedily snapping up every single hunter job in sight. So much for climbing the ranks anytime soon for Jinhook. Today, however, seems to be Jinhook's incredibly lucky day. A sudden loud crash, followed by horrifying screaming echoing from a school area. This is finally his chance to shine. Chaos like that can only mean dangerous monsters are on the loose, and just bagging a few of them could potentially set him up with enough cash to coast comfortably for a whole year. But as his luck would sadly have it, his dreams are promptly crushed when a man barrels in, shoving Jinhook roughly aside, as several other experienced hunters swoop onto the scene. Titan, the powerful guild managing this area, is already there in force, and in a flash, they expertly take control of the situation. Dayun, the deputy guildmaster, snaps at Jinhook, sharply telling him to get lost, unless he truly wishes to. He is itching for a one-way ticket straight to the afterlife. The gap between him, a mere D rank, and an A rank hunter from a powerful big-time guild, is just too massive to ever bridge. with his aspirations completely trampled. He trudges on to his next depressing part-time gig, hoping at least it will pay a few of his bills. Later, as he finally arrives home, weighed down by a hefty dose of crushing defeat, he hears a truly strange noise. Emerging from the depths of his apartment, he begins investigating the source. He suddenly finds himself face to face with a mysterious portal, leading straight to another world absolutely packed with fearsome monsters. Amazingly, the menacing creatures seem completely unable to see him, and he finds himself easily able to pass through the gateway, experiencing absolutely zero weird reactions or strange sensations. Could this finally be the life-changing break he has been searching for? He quickly heads downstairs to collect his racing thoughts and deeply ponders all his available options. This bizarre portal is undoubtedly some kind of mysterious dungeon, a concept that up until this very moment had only ever existed in theory. If it had appeared anywhere else but his own personal attic, he would be absolutely thrilled, but it's right here in his own home. A detail which significantly complicates things. Reporting such a discovery to the powerful association would undoubtedly mean they would promptly kick him out for their own extensive investigative purposes. So his only viable choice is to keep this secret completely under wraps and successfully claim this amazing discovery as his very own first. But first he desperately needs to confirm if the monsters can cross over to his safe side of the precarious portal. Thankfully, it appears they truly cannot see him at all. A definite significant plus, given that he could manage at best only 2 or 3 measly goblins completely solo. If a whole terrifying group decided to suddenly jump through, he'd undoubtedly be completely toast with nothing left to lose. So he takes a deep, calming breath and bravely steps through the portal, instantly landing on the chaotic first floor of a dungeon maze. He barely has a moment to even take in his strange surroundings before a ferocious goblin suddenly rushes him from the left. Club in hand, he narrowly dodges out of the way. He quickly scrambles back into the safety of his attic, watching intently as the goblin looks around completely confused, angrily swinging its club at the empty air around it. It truly seems to be the case. They truly cannot actually see the shimmering portal from their side, which also means they cannot come bursting through it either. With that crucial knowledge, his paralyzing fear instantly evaporates. He quickly grabs a trusty baseball bat, hops back through the portal, and bravely charges the goblin absolutely head-on, swinging the bat with all his desperate might. He connects, catching the goblin directly on the cheek, sending the creature violently flying, and follows up with a swift, decisive stab to its chest. With his very first monster hunt successfully under his belt, he raises his trusty bat high and brings it crashing down hard on the goblin's head, ending the intense fight instantly. For the very first time in his entire life, he's hunted solo, with absolutely no one to share the glorious spoils. All the hard-earned experience points are entirely his own. His level, stagnant for a frustrating 3 years, immediately ticks up, soaring higher now, and the goblin's defeated body is entirely his to sell. A potential 3,000,001, a hefty sum, if he simply plays his cards absolutely right. The very next day, he eagerly heads to a bustling hunter's market, trying to sell off that valuable goblin corpse. But one swift look at the body, and the shrewd merchant can instantly tell our guy's a total newbie. His undeniable inexperience has severely lowered the goblin's market value, unfortunately. Still, despite this minor setback, Jinik still manages to secure a little over 3 million won. Just as he'd hoped, all he absolutely needs to do now is simply provide the area where he successfully hunted the goblin for verification, but that's one piece of crucial information Jinik absolutely cannot afford to reveal. If anyone finds out there's a secret dungeon right in his attic, his hard-earned profits could vanish instantly, faster than a goblin hit by a lightning-fast baseball bat. While Jinik is desperately trying to figure out a clever way to escape his latest dire predicament, a furious group of hunters from the Black Dragon Guild storms in with intense aggression, like a relentless pack of hyenas on the scent of fresh, vulnerable prey. Apparently, someone has dared to steal. Someone dared to steal a kill from their precious territory. And they're certainly not pleased in the slightest at first. They zero in on Jinik, fully ready to confront him aggressively. But the clever merchant quickly redirects their surging wrath to a bewildered blonde-haired hunter who, completely oblivious to the whole volatile situation, becomes the poor, unfortunate target. The enraged hunters quickly close in on him, and after a swift, brutal introduction, he's left barely able to stand, utterly battered, sneaking into their protected territory to hunt dangerous monsters without proper permission. A massive mistake for all they truly know. He could even be the serial killer they're relentlessly hunting, perhaps, with the poor guy barely able to string a coherent sentence together. They roughly drag him out of the building to continue their intense interrogation elsewhere. Watching the entire chaotic scene unfold, Jinik instantly realizes with a jolt that he could have easily been in the blonde hunter's shoes, knowing now that there's absolutely no way he can lie his way out of where he got that valuable goblin from. He quickly realizes selling his items here just isn't worth the immense risk, especially if he values his very own life. So he'll have to find another method to offload all his precious loot without having to deal with the ruthless goons from the big guilds. As soon as Ginny makes it back to his cozy apartment, he quickly decides it's absolutely time to power up and level, before he bravely heads back into the dangerous dungeon once more. He quickly arms himself with a handy teleportation stone, perfect for those lightning-quick escapes back to his apartment. A super reliable monster tracking compass with a 50-meter range. And of course his trusty, ever-present baseball bat. Fully equipped and ready, he steps back into the monster-filled dungeon, embarking on an epic monster-slaying spree for experience, with each hard-fought victory ticking up his level by one. True to its ominous and fearsome name, the Goblin Labyrinth is absolutely packed to the brim with goblins, making it the perfect monster-filled playground for someone at his current level to tirelessly grind for experience. After a long and exhausting day of intense hunting, his inventory is almost completely maxed out. He's got room for just one more goblin to defeat, hoping it will be a big one for some extra valuable cash. The compass pings loudly, showing a goblin quickly approaching his exact location. It's absolutely perfect. All he needs to do is hide and launch a devastating surprise attack. Ginny quickly positions himself strategically around a corner, patiently waits for the absolute perfect moment, and wildly swings his trusty bat right into the unsuspecting face of a remarkably short man. To Ginny's utter horror, it's definitely not a goblin, but a very irate and furious stranger, shouting furiously at him in a language he simply can't understand. Ginny hurriedly bows deeply, offering a sincere apology, which seems to calm the incredibly angry man down just enough. The stranger then pulls two beautiful necklaces from his bag, hands one directly to Ginny, and as soon as Ginny puts it on, he can suddenly understand completely. Every single furious word the angry man is now saying. That's when he realizes two crucial things immediately. First, the guy has every single reason to be absolutely furious, having just taken a powerful bat right to his face. And second, this isn't just a very short man. It's actually a mighty dwarf, a mythical being he'd only ever read about in fantasy novels. As the dwarf continues his furious rant, Ginny helps pick up all the scattered items lying around, all of which look to be of exceptionally high quality. Unfortunately, he doesn't even get a chance to admire them before the dwarf instantly notices his own bag and quickly snatches it up with lightning speed, demanding to know precisely where G-Nick got this incredible item. A truly baffled G-Nick then tries to explain that it's merely a simple, ordinary aluminum baseball bat, but the dwarf is absolutely convinced it's made from orichalcum, a highly prized and legendary metal for the dwarf. This ordinary bat is shockingly valuable to the dwarf, that no amount of money in the world could ever buy it. Instead, he offers G-Nick a fantastic, enticing trade, offering some truly rare items from his own secret stash, all in exchange for the bat. G-Nick sees no reason to refuse. G-Nick quickly follows the dwarf back to his bustling workshop, watching closely as the dwarf takes the precious bat deeper into the maze of countless tools and forgotten treasures. And as G-Nick glances around the incredible workshop, his eyes immediately fall upon the various weapons laid out. He simply can't help but wonder, his mind racing, which one he should slyly try to swipe for himself. But the dwarf suddenly returns before G-Nick can make up his mind. In his hands, G-Nick's newly upgraded baseball bat now rests. For some mysterious, unknown reason, it's now shining a brilliant bright red and has a slight glow. G-Nick quickly double-checks, asking if this is really his bat. The dwarf then immediately confirms that it's just one of orichalcum's incredible, unique traits. It initially starts out feeling weak and flimsy, but once it becomes truly enchanted, it instantly becomes incredibly strong and super durable. That last word, enchanted, instantly catches G-Nick's attention. Somehow the dwarf truly managed to enchant his baseball bat. Testing a few powerful swings, G-Nick notices immediately it now feels entirely different from what he remembers. It's almost truly hard to believe that something this powerful could even possibly exist, let alone be made from just an ordinary aluminum bat. He quickly checks his status menu to confirm, and to his absolute surprise, sure enough, his bat is now proudly classified as a legendary item, boasting incredible S-grade durability, and even an automatic retrieval feature. G-Nick's once basic bat, now transformed, has truly turned into an ultra-rare treasure. Selling this amazing item would truly be a jackpot. But the item is bound directly to him now. So unfortunately, no dice still. Even if he can't make money off this amazing bat, he can always still make some quick cash with the goblin corpses he's secretly stashed in his inventory. The only problem is he can't sell them openly, without immediately drawing unwanted attention to himself. His very best option is the Hunter Industries black market. They do not ask questions, they have a solid setup for handling all sorts of unique inventory. G-Nick heads straight for home. He uses one of those shady black market business cards and tracks down a truly suspicious-looking address. The card screams shady, but it is all he has got. While diligently searching for the entrance, a man named Deputy Cho Hyung-il calls down to him and eagerly invites G-Nick to meet their boss. The boss, Lee Junshul, is a ruthless loan shark disguised as a loan agent, who also secretly dabbles in monster corpses on the side. When Jinnik lays out 20 goblin corpses for inspection, the two men are absolutely stunned, despite Jinnik being a total newbie. Jinnik managed to bring in such an incredible haul, and in an incredible condition too. Well, except for all of those bashed-in heads. As they are busily negotiating prices, they are suddenly interrupted by a frantic black market merchant, frantically rushing in to loudly announce that a monster has ominously shown up nearby. It turns out that laying out 20 fresh goblin corpses was like putting up a giant neon sign for all nearby monsters. And worse yet, two massive orcs, definitely out of Jinnik's league, appear. And Jinnik quickly realizes he only has two options: grab his valuable corpses and run, or become orc food. But it is already far too late. One of the orcs is already fiercely swinging a massive battle axe. Straight at his head, he deftly dodges the first swing. But the second one is much too close. Just when he thinks it is game over, his powerful enchanted bat magically summons itself right from his inventory and heroically blocks the attack, sending the orc flying backward. Another amazing enchantment, presence detection. With this formidable bat, Jinnik might actually stand a chance. As the orc charges again, Jinnik, now much more confident, immediately goes on the offensive. He violently smashes the bat down on the orc's knee, completely disorienting it, and follows up with a crushing strike to its face, snapping its neck instantly. Just like that, his level dramatically jumps from 24 to 36. But before he can even celebrate the second orc attacks, this time he expertly dodges, runs swiftly behind it, and slams his bat with full force into its back, then finishes it off with a powerful blow to the head. With the orcs decisively defeated, Jinnik smirks and turns back to the stun men, and cleverly suggests adding the orc corpses to their burgeoning deal. That day, Jinx walks away with an undeniable spring in his step, having successfully convinced them to pay him a full 15 above market price. His bank account is now truly a glorious sight to behold, and thanks to his heroic act of saving the black market crew, he secured a highly reliable buyer for all his future loot. Clearly, the black market guys have now fully realized Jinx isn't some low-level common thief. They are truly looking at a formidable hunter, strong enough to single-handedly take down two mighty orcs solo, even with his legendary bat and incredible newfound strength. Though Jinx knows deep down in his heart, he'll certainly need much better gear to tackle those higher-grade monsters. Fortunately, Jinx has an ingenious plan to score his next upgrades, maybe even for free if things go well the very next day. Jinx shows up triumphantly with a crate full of glistening beer cans and plenty of delicious alcohol for his dwarf friend. Jinx was thinking he'd truly struck pure gold here. After all, everyone knows the dwarf absolutely loves aluminum. So why not beer cans? The dwarf's eyes suddenly widen, seeing the crate surprisingly full of shining orichalcum. He tries again only to violently spit it out immediately. The taste was absolutely, truly horrible and disgusting. To avoid inciting yet another intense shouting match, Jinx quickly offers him some refined soju instead. The dwarf takes a hearty swig, and while he's mildly satisfied, there's clearly still some room for greater improvement. Jinx can instinctively sense this perfectly. The dwarf is definitely looking for that incredible extra kick, taking clever advantage of this perfect moment. The dwarf gives Jinx a brand new quest mine, some precious mithril ore, What does mithril possibly have to do with amazing alcohol? Who truly knows, but Jinx desperately wants free gear. So he dives deeper into the dark labyrinth, emerging at a large forest clearing on the ominous second floor. A mysterious menu suddenly pops up into view, telling him he can record this specific location as a war point. Jinx has absolutely no idea what a war point is, but Jinx accepts it anyway with curiosity, creating a shimmering portal to easily travel between floors. He ventures further, finally reaching the second floor, ominously called the floor of dogs and skeletons. Immediately, ferocious monster dogs leap at him, compared to the mighty orcs he fought just before. These are nothing more than easy, free XP. He swings his trusty bat with wild abandon, wiping out 25 of them and quickly collecting their corpses. That impressive haul alone should net him a solid 200 million won. Tempting as all that money truly is, he has to stay sharply focused on his current mission, mining that shiny mithril or delving ever deeper, when suddenly, menacing skeletons start to appear. Since these bony foes can't be sold for profit, and must be destroyed by shattering their glowing cores, Genik finally understands why the shrewd dwarf sent him. Instead of bravely venturing in himself, skeletons are an absolute nightmare, truly a massive pain to handle. But they do help boost his combat level all the way to 100, ultimately unlocking a powerful new class. Expecting a fierce berserker or mighty warrior class. After all the brutal fighting he's endured, he's absolutely stunned to find he's designated a cleric. After valiantly dispatching all the bothersome skeletons, he finally collects the precious, gleaming mithril, or the dwarf, who had completely doubted he'd make it back alive, now seems genuinely impressed. And as a grand reward, he offers to expertly forge anything Genik could ever want. Already armed with a legendary, formidable bat, Genik shrewdly requests lightweight, protective armor that can still expertly withstand even the heaviest hits. The skilled dwarf immediately gets to painstaking work, and Genik heads home for a truly well-deserved, restful nap. Just a few hours later, after a quick rest, he returns to find the dwarf ready with an incredible new piece. A dazzling, perfectly crafted mithril chainmail. It's ingeniously designed to fit snugly under his shirt and hoodie, making it the perfect, most discreet hidden armor to fully demonstrate its unmatched durability. The dwarf powerfully smacks Genik in the chest with a heavy hammer, an attack that would have normally shattered a rib or two. But Genik barely even feels the powerful impact. With his phenomenal armor and his enchanted, trusty bat, his combat skills have absolutely skyrocketed, reaching new heights. Meeting this incredibly skilled dwarf was definitely the lucky, game-changing break he'd been waiting for. But the generous dwarf isn't quite done yet. He hands Genik a huge, custom-crafted barrel of soju, made from the very mithril or Genik bravely brought back. Genik quickly takes it home, eager to try it, and instantly discovers the dwarf was absolutely right. The mithril barrel has completely transformed the soju into something entirely unique and wonderfully potent. With this powerful new asset in his hands, he contacts the elusive black market dealer once again, offering not only the valuable cobalt corpses, but now also this exclusive, premium quality liquor. Meanwhile, in an entirely different part of the bustling town, the formidable Titan Guild is just finishing a tough training session when an unexpected, dangerous anomaly gate suddenly rips open, spewing forth terrifying hordes of savage lizard men. Meanwhile, Deputy Guild Master Endin stubbornly refuses to call for backup, pushing his team to hold the line on their own. Jinnik, however, is having a much better day. His cleric class is now officially registered, and he's been promoted from D rank to C rank. Given that clerics are incredibly rare and highly sought after by top guilds, he's thrilled about the new opportunities opening up. Just then, a bloodied hunter suddenly bursts in, desperate for a cleric's help. Jinnik volunteers and is taken to the site, where Titan Guild members are locked in a fierce battle. With the lizard men, he's instructed to stay in the back and heal as many people as he can. Jinnik wants to jump right into the action, but the guild member assures him that healing is all he needs to do, and he'll be handsomely paid once the fight is over. The healer's presence alone is enough to keep the guild members fighting. But the waves of lizard men are relentless. One of the other clerics suggests calling a support guild for backup, as the odds are starting to look grim. Just as Jinnik is considering their next move, he senses a hostile presence behind him. His trusty bat saves him from a nearly fatal blow, delivered by a sneaky lizard man, who somehow bypassed all the hunters, aiming straight for the healers. Realizing that the rear defense has been breached, Jinnik swings his bat, sending the attacker flying. He quickly warns the other clerics about the breach. He quickly comes to the understanding that he's the only one who can hold them off. The monsters must have used a concealment technique to slip through, planning to ambush the healers from behind. Jinnik instructs the clerics to focus on healing and leave the lizard men to him. The other clerics look at him with concern. They think he's just another ordinary healer like them. But Jinnik charges in, reassuring them with a confidence. He's only kind of feeling himself. In reality, he's incredibly nervous, but he manages to hold his ground against the onslaught. At one point, a lizard man slips past his guard and lunges for another cleric. Jenny swiftly bolts after it. Leaping just in time, she perfectly intercepts the attack. He lands a powerful rush blow, but shockingly, he leaves himself open for a critical stab from behind. Thankfully, for everyone's sake, the dwarf's sturdy chainmail armor completely absorbs the impact, leaving the monster utterly bewildered and in shock. When its ferocious attack completely fails to work, Jinx instantly seizes the critical moment, countering with a solid, devastating swing directly to the creature's face, managing to impressively hold the defensive line and allowing the crucial clerics to focus solely on their healing. Suddenly, all the terrifying lizard men freeze in their tracks, as an incredibly powerful figure dramatically joins the fray. A man who effortlessly takes down one of the monstrous creatures. With a single, earth-shattering punch, it's none other than CEO Sango, the legendary Titan Guild Master himself. He nods at Jinwoo and then asks if he was the one who bravely took down all the fearsome monsters. In this entire perilous area, Jinwoo, a bit confused about who this absolute powerhouse truly is, admits he was indeed handling things here. The clerics nearby are utterly baffled. How could he possibly not recognize Sango, the infamous S-rank hunter of legends? With absolutely no time to spare, Sango heads back into the fierce battle, promising to reward Jinwoo for his crucial help later. As soon as he powerfully steps in, his commanding presence immediately raises everyone's flagging spirits. Everyone, that is, except and in the disgruntled deputy guildmaster, who's clearly incredibly irritated. Sango takes absolute charge without any hesitation, barking confident orders, and commanding instant attention from all the hunters. With the immediate area now cleared, he unleashes an incredibly powerful shockwave attack that sends all the lizard men hurtling flying. In mere lightning-fast moments, Sango has utterly wiped out all the remaining monsters, satisfied that his precious guild members are now entirely safe. Sango turns to Andon, sternly grabbing him by the jacket. To reprimand him, he demanded to know his thoughts, risking your own life, and the lives of everyone else, just like that. Andon then bravely claims he just wanted to protect the guild's precious reputation. But Sango immediately sees straight through him. It's not about the guild at all, Sango insists. It's purely about your own pride. Their tense stare down is broken when one of the vigilant guild members reminds Sango to dismiss the group. The clerics quickly work to secure the area. Sango collects himself, then turns to address the brave hunters, expressing his deep gratitude for all their incredible efforts, especially giving a shout-out to Jinnik, who played an absolutely pivotal role in keeping everyone alive. As a sincere gesture of profound gratitude, Sango extends an exclusive invitation for Jinnik to join the Titan Guild directly, bypassing the standard, tedious registration process entirely. But then Andon just can't hold himself back, immediately jumping in to arrogantly belittle Jinnik, calling him merely a deer rank who simply got lucky. Sango absolutely will not stand for it. He powerfully reminds Andon that this so-called mere deer rank saved countless precious lives, lives that would have been tragically lost without Jinnik's fierce determination. Sango then sternly forces Andon to publicly apologize, dealing a truly crushing blow to Andon's inflated pride. However, much to everyone's surprise, Jinnik calmly declines the offer. He states he's just not interested in joining any guild, where arrogant individuals like Andon can hold any authority. That declaration becomes the absolute final straw for Andon, who furiously lunges at Jinnik with an enhanced, powerful punch, only to be met by Jinnik's trusty bat landing squarely in his stomach. The brutal blow instantly knocks in and out cold, and this shocking scene quickly makes headlines, sparking an incredible buzz across all the local news outlets. The very next day, the furious higher-ups of the Titan Guild are absolutely seething with rage over what happened to Andon. Not only was he publicly embarrassed by a mere C-rank hunter, but he was also swiftly demoted from his prominent position as the deputy guild master, a true fall from grace. They aggressively demand that this audacious C-rank show up before them to provide a thorough explanation for his actions. However, Guild Master Sango, the Guild Master, isn't having any of their complaints. He sharply points out that Andon's actions not only put multiple guild members' lives at grave risk, all for the pathetic sake of his own baseless pride, but also brazenly attempted to attack someone who heroically fought for their very guild. That's more than enough compelling reason for a complete demotion. In Sango's unwavering eyes, this powerful comment completely shuts the gathered crowd down, leaving them with absolutely nothing further to say. Sango then sternly sends them all on their way, but his mind remains fixated on one thing. His thoughts keep wandering back to that extraordinary C-rank hunter, the truly impressive one he witnessed just the other day. Before that C-rank hunter grows any stronger than he already is, he absolutely must get Jinnik to join his guild, no matter what it takes. Jinnik is lounging lazily in his apartment, enjoying a refreshing drink while reviewing his expenses. Since he had recently made a substantial fortune from hunting, he found himself spending much more than his usual amount, pushing his expenses to an absolutely absurd and shocking high. If only he had known things would turn out in such an extreme way. He definitely would have accepted the extra pay the Titan Guild had initially offered him, but hey, ultimately it truly doesn't matter, because he now possesses a much better way to earn vast amounts of money. After some much-needed and well-deserved relaxation time, he enthusiastically heads back into the perilous dungeon, driven by the goal to collect even more valuable monster corpses. However, hunting the same old familiar monsters isn't enough for him anymore now that he has grown significantly stronger. He hungrily craves even tougher and more challenging opponents. He ventures even deeper into the dungeon's second floor than usual, and suddenly finds himself facing off against a surprisingly small but fierce army of orcs. One of the cunning creatures tries to sneak up from behind, but he deftly sidesteps the sudden attack and swiftly retaliates, defeating that orc instantly with a powerful blow, as several other enraged orcs aggressively swarm around him. Genik thinks to himself, just a few short days ago, I surely would have been dead on the spot. Thanks to his incredible new equipment, though, he dispatches them all with surprising ease and speed. By the exhilarating end, he counts a total of 20 orc corpses, which is certainly enough to keep him financially secure for a whole year. Still feeling incredibly energetic and eager for more, he decides to delve even deeper into the dangerous dungeon, bravely entering the mysterious third floor, ominously named the Temple Guardian's Labyrinth. At first glance, the entire area appears eerily empty, but that deceptive calm is shattered by a sudden violent tremor, shaking the very ground as a giant stone hand bursts out beneath him. Genik barely manages to dodge the crushing attack. Thankfully, he's incredibly quick on his feet and reactions. The enormous hand belongs to a massive stone golem, an artificial and formidable monster built from pure mana. Its devastating attacks are simply too fast for him to effectively dodge, and even when he desperately blocks them, the sheer force sends him staggering violently back with each hit. With severely limited options left to him, he realizes that this golem is incredibly strong and resilient, but it truly lacks the intelligence to effectively wield that immense strength with any real strategy. Taking advantage of this, Genik lands a decisive blow on its head, shattering it into countless pieces of rock. But wait, suddenly the golem bafflingly starts to reform. Oh, that's right, I almost forgot. Golems can only be truly defeated by breaking their core. Genik suddenly exclaims in surprise. Remembering this crucial detail, just a moment too late, he realizes, as he tries to quickly retreat and formulate a strategy. The monstrous golem instantly regenerates its hand, quickly enough to ensnare him before he can possibly escape. Just when he thinks he's completely trapped, an arrow suddenly flies in and powerfully strikes the golem right in the chest. Seizing this sudden, unexpected opportunity, Genik follows up with a swift, sharp jab from his trusty bat, breaking its core and defeating it once and for all. What a relief. He turns to thank his mysterious, powerful savior. But instead of the dwarf he surprisingly expected, he's met with a stunningly beautiful woman, sporting some rather peculiar pointed ears. An elf, he muses to himself. Bowing his head, he sincerely thanks her for saving him. But he doesn't even notice as she suddenly rushes toward him. Before he knows it, she grabs him tightly by the collar, pulling him in for a rather intense interrogation. I haven't seen you in this dungeon before, I wonder. Who are you, and where did you come from, tell me? She demands, her curiosity proving quite unyielding. Clearly she's not from Jinnick's world at all. His strange outfit looks entirely unfamiliar to her, as he struggles fiercely to escape her tight grip. She relentlessly bombards him with questions. Eventually she finally lets him go, after he mentions that he only entered the dungeon today. That means you know where the entrance is, well. She triumphantly exclaims with joy, shoving him roughly to the ground before dropping her bow. Finally, I found a way out of this dreadful dungeon. Jinnick stands up, demanding to know what's going on, with her sudden shocking aggression and behavior. But the elf completely ignores him, insisting fiercely that he take her to the exit now. Not particularly impressed by her sheer boldness. He rolls his eyes, but internally thinks she is really pretty. Though I guess I can let it slide for now, for sure. If you guide me out of this dark dungeon, I'll compensate you handsomely, I promise. She confidently promises, after all she knows. I'm a platinum rank mercenary, you see. So you can trust me. Her name is Lucia, and she's a well-known half-elf who prides herself on being quite famous. Surely he must have heard of her somewhere, right? But Jinnick has absolutely no idea what she's talking about when she proudly declares herself a platinum rank mercenary and flashes her impressive badge before him. He's completely dumbfounded, never seeing or hearing of such a thing. Did you seriously come from some super rural area? She demands to know how he doesn't recognize her badge. She exclaims, a puzzled look etched across her surprised face. I'm from Seoul, Korea, he calmly replies to her, and her entire expression suddenly shifts to utter bewilderment. Then she utters, wait. What did you just say, Seoul, Korea? Lucia instantly realizes that the crazy mage might have actually succeeded with his dimension hopping spell after all. A powerful mage from my dimension cast a spell on this dungeon that somehow caused it to hop straight over into yours. She explains, a concept that sounds completely impossible to Jinnick. But it truly seems that this is exactly what happened here. However, since it was a dimensional shift, reversing this powerful magic will allow her to return safely to her world. Jinnick had definitely felt something was very odd, but it turns out this dungeon isn't even from his world. If it returns to its original location, that could spell serious trouble for him. He asks her if she plans to send the dungeon back immediately, but she tells him she truly can't. It would be far too difficult to reverse the magic here. She replies to him, but there's a specific potential location that could totally help. It's a hidden room right on this floor that I found a long while ago, while desperately searching for an exit. She asks for his help in getting to the hidden room and promises to generously reward him for his assistance. The conditions don't seem too bad at all, so he wholeheartedly agrees to help her reach it. As they bravely make their way, they fight off a few orcs. And Jinnick quickly notices something important, that she's a lot stronger than he initially thought. That powerful arrow she fired earlier, no joke, fighting her here would definitely be a massive disadvantage for him. His safest bet indeed. Cooperate with her and continue assessing the situation. After a little more walking, they decide to rest at a safe spot. Jinnick had packed some chocolates in his pockets for emergencies, and he hands one to her. She takes a liking to it immediately and demands more. After devouring his entire stash of provisions, she immediately demands even more. What a surprise. But alas, that was truly the very last piece. Yet somehow she seems fully content to carry on with their journey, at least for the moment, because soon enough, they finally arrive at a colossal ominous chamber, the very lair of the dungeon's fearsome boss. Lucia suspects there's a good possibility the lost mage's spell could be hidden within this very room, so to investigate, they absolutely must take down the powerful dungeon boss. She assures him he won't have to exert himself too much. All he really needs to do is assist her in finishing it off quickly. Once she utterly demolishes it, they can finally open the sealed door. The instant they step inside, the colossal monster unleashes a furious, earth-shaking roar, then immediately launches a devastating attack. Lucia swiftly charges an arrow with potent energy, then aims it precisely at the boss's vulnerable chest. "Watch me closely," she dramatically proclaims. Like an unstoppable superhero in action, she then deploys a specialized technique known as Aura, specifically to significantly boost the impact of her strike. She unleashes the arrow, and it slams into the boss head-on, violently knocking the massive creature onto its back. Unbelievably, a single, precise attack from her was more than enough to completely bring down that colossal, armored beast. Now that's what you call showing off. Now Jean Hook must move quickly to finish the daunting job, before the formidable creature has a chance to rise again. Following the same strategy he used with the golems, he absolutely must target its vulnerable core. He leaps directly onto the massive, fallen creature's chest, then relentlessly bashes his trusty bat, precisely where he estimates the glowing core resides. But a single blow proves insufficient to fully disable it. And then, without warning, a colossal fist rushes at him from the side. He barely manages to block it with one of his potent cleric skills. The formidable holy shield, like a seasoned professional, skillfully leveraging his own momentum, he propels himself right back onto its vulnerable chest. If a single, powerful hit simply isn't going to cut it, then he'll just keep relentlessly bashing it until it completely stops moving. Ultimately, he successfully shatters the core open, and the fearsome creature is at last utterly defeated. A well-deserved level up, soaring towards an incredible 200 points. Now that the mighty creature is utterly down for the count, Jean Hook quickly returns to Lucia and eagerly asks her to teach him the secrets of using Aura. But little does he know, he's already used Aura. His shield skill has already transformed his holy cleric power directly into Aura. For him, it was merely a basic class skill. Lucia, on the other hand, has absolutely no idea what he just did. But hey, if he can wield such incredible skills, it looks like he will master the art of wielding Aura much faster than she ever imagined with his potential. He might even be able to instantly enhance his attacks with potent Aura powers right away. But first, there is one crucial condition. She sent him right back to get more chocolates for her. Meanwhile, far back in the bustling city, Sango strolls alongside his capable secretary, Lee Haina, discussing a new menacing anomaly that just appeared near Gangnam Station. It was first detected just yesterday, meaning they only have about 5 days to prepare before a truly powerful monster crashes the party. No matter how Sango envisions the scenario, there is no way his guild can handle this one alone, especially not on their own. All the other formidable major guilds have been swiftly dispatched overseas, leaving only the powerful Titan Guild as the sole remaining force in Korea to fight. Haina continues her search for capable hunters who are currently freelancing locally, but none of them appear truly reliable. Sango, on the other hand, has his sights set on someone else and coincidentally, that very someone just happens to be crossing the street. He quickly excuses himself from the vital conversation with his secretary and energetically chases after Jean Hook, who is carrying home a large box of delicious snacks that the demanding elf asked him to get. When the guild master's voice suddenly catches his attention, he offers his compelling proposal for Jean Hook to join the Titan Guild. Once more, a fantastic opportunity. But Jean Hook has absolutely no plans to change his mind. In that particular case, then, Sango offers Jean Hook a lucrative job as a mercenary, so he can still work directly for the guild, without officially being a part of it. The reward sounds incredibly substantial, which instantly piques Jean Hook's interest. But he promises to only think it over for now. Classic. He then quickly returns to the dungeon and excitedly presents the snacks to the elf. She happily and hungrily devours them all, and it is abundantly clear for all to see. This delicious food, it simply doesn't exist in her world, a true novelty. Following her incredibly satisfying and hearty meal, Jean Hook then curiously questions why she's still eating. Deep down here in the cold dungeon basement, especially since they've already utterly defeated that fierce boss monster, Lucia points upwards, gesturing at a glowing magic circle emblazoned on the ceiling, and passionately explains that this very circle connects the dark dungeon directly to the bustling world he calls home, and because of this connection, she'll need to remain down here for the foreseeable time being, diligently studying it. So if he truly desires to learn more about the mysteries of Aura, he's definitely going to need to bring her many more delectable chocolates. With her meal now completely finished, she grasps his hand firmly, ready to teach him the secrets of using Aura. First, she skillfully pours her own powerful aura directly into his body, purely to demonstrate exactly what that incredible sensation feels like. As Jean Hook perceives the raw power surging and flowing into his being, Lucia keenly observes an astonishing spike of pure energy. It quickly becomes clear he possesses far more innate talent for this than she could have ever initially expected or imagined. The incredible movement of that holy, sacred power, coursing vigorously through him, is already truly impressive enough. So much so that she firmly believes he'll completely grasp the very basics. By the day's end, she commends him heartily for his exceptional talent, and then asks him if he can vividly remember the intricate flow of aura within his very own body with absolute confidence. He confidently assures her that he most certainly can, and she acknowledges his conviction with a firm, approving nod. Before she suddenly turns to exit and leave the dungeon area, she casually mentions something important, that she was initially supposed to thoroughly investigate this strange magic circle. But it seems there's a different priority. But it suddenly seems far faster to train him intensely on how to use aura. And the absolute best way to do that is through truly practical experience. She swiftly leads him to a completely different, darker part of the dungeon, and then unexpectedly tosses him directly into a massive horde of monsters. Surprise, she seems to playfully imply with her actions, as he suddenly finds himself valiantly fighting an entire army of aggressive goblins and snarling kobolds, all rushing him at once, a chaotic scene. Surprisingly, he manages to incredibly hold his own in the fierce battle, while also cleverly collecting all of their defeated corpses. Turning back towards Lucia, he urgently asks, "Why am I suddenly, without warning, fighting this massive horde of monsters? Especially when you clearly said I'd be primarily learning how to use aura." She simply shrugs, stating that this is precisely how one truly learns. Even though I infused just a tiny bit of mana directly into your body, specifically so you could initially feel it, you absolutely need to sense the powerful rest entirely on your own. Just activate your aura by harnessing your raw holy power. There's truly no better way to fully develop the natural instinct for it than right here in the middle of intense, real combat. Jean Hook is incredibly upset that Lucia never bothered to mention any of this beforehand, and instead simply threw him into a brutal battle with no warning. As they continue their intense fight, the very ground begins to tremble and shake, and suddenly a massive stone golem violently erupts from the earth. It unleashes a thunderous roar, sending Jean Hook flying backwards with immense force. As Lucia calmly explains that he must face a true crisis to awaken his powers. To unlock his full potential, all he needs to do is truly focus and desperately try to feel the sacred holy power surging forth from the powerful shield he generates with his skill. The protective shield itself is purely made of spiritual aura. So once he manages to get the hang of this ability, he will surely pick it up very quickly. Easier said than done, especially for him, since he still doesn't consciously activate the powerful holy shield himself. How am I even supposed to feel any kind of aura from something that just turns on completely automatically? He wonders to himself just then. The monstrous golem brings down a huge, crushing fist directly toward him, and he instinctively blocks the attack with his holy shield once again. This time, though, something is different. He feels a strange sensation, a strange, warm energy powerfully gathering around his left hand. The very hand that is activating the skill. This must be exactly what holy power truly feels like. The golem viciously attacks again, and Jean Hook summons his holy shield once more. Except for this time, it possesses a completely different shape than he remembers. The unique sensation of summoning the shield is also vastly different. This must be mana, he thinks, but the golem is relentless. The golem gives him absolutely no time to figure all of this out, and violently smashes down hard on the shield, sending Jean Hook powerfully flying back. Lucia mockingly laughs at him from her grand podium, saying, "I told you to master your skill, not to make such foolish mistakes." He was just doing what she explicitly told him to, though. As he desperately prepares for another incoming attack, a glowing status window suddenly appears right in front of him. He has acquired a brand new skill called Holy Power Application. This remarkable skill now allows him to harness holy power to greatly enhance both his attack and defense, based on precisely how much holy power is actively used. Wait, so there are other fantastic ways to gain skills. Beyond just a simple job change, he thinks excitedly. Lucia notices him spacing out completely and decides to take matters into her own capable hands. It appears facing a massive golem. While you're still mastering aura is too much for you, she remarks, offering to handle it from this point. But Jean Hook quickly recovers his composure and firmly tells her to stand down. Now that I truly grasp my new abilities, I should easily be able to handle everything. He charges at the golem, leaping off the very ground, to narrowly dodge another massive stone fist, aiming directly at him while he is in the air. He focuses all his mana into the bat, and uses a front flip to gain even more momentum, before bringing the mana-enhanced bat crashing down. Onto the golem's head, the monster then falls. But he is not yet satisfied at all. He lands on its chest and focuses one more time, trying to channel even greater mana into his bat, before bringing it down right onto the golem's very chest. At that very moment, he unlocks a new skill, Holy Aura, with his newly enhanced weapon. He stabs the golem and successfully shatters its core. Unlocking his powerful Holy Aura also allows him to gain incredible new skills, like Precision Strike and Unyielding, all thanks to Lucia's intensive training. He unlocked 2 passive skills and 1 active skill. But Lucia is much more concerned about the fact that he learned how to use Aura in battle in such an incredibly short time. She was only expecting to teach him the basics and then simply call it a day. But now she has to see this through to the very end. She takes one of her arrows and brings down a huge wall, opening up the area to an even larger horde of terrifying monsters. Gene Hook is not at all impressed, but he readies his bat and prepares for another battle. Here we go again, he thinks to himself, steeling himself for the chaos that lies ahead. The long battle with the monsters in the dungeon truly takes a great deal out of him, and by the time he goes to sell the monster corpses, he is completely exhausted. He looks so tired that the black market boss, Jinu, immediately notices him. When they finally meet, Gene Hook appears as if he just emerged from a war zone. Jinu decides not to ask too many questions and quickly gets down to business, accepting the monster corpses that he brought. He then brings up the topic of the alcohol he sold to them. He'd been marketing it as a traditional artisan soju. Since its launch, orders have been absolutely flooding in, and this drink has become incredibly popular. Everyone loves it. In a very short time, he could focus entirely on selling liquor and never have to worry about money ever again. Jinu ponders this possibility with a smile, with more than enough money to last him for the rest of his life, and a thriving small business already thriving. Gene Hook finally heads home, eager for some rest. His intense training with Lucia has left him immensely tired, and just mere seconds after lying down in his cozy bed, he instantly passes out, completely exhausted. He's suddenly jolted awake by the blaring sound of a disaster alert. A loud automated voice booms through the city, urgently urges everyone on the street to evacuate immediately and quickly get to safety wherever they can find it. Today is indeed the day of the dreaded monster invasion, but it seems to have arrived much earlier this month. Monster invasions usually happen quite randomly and unpredictably, but there's a certain type of invasion that regularly occurs after a set period of precisely 1 month. This particular invasion is quite common and frequent, and usually Gene Hook would eagerly seize this opportunity to catch some low-level monsters for a bit of quick cash. This time, though, things are different. He's simply too tired and exhausted to even care. The powerful Titan Guild will surely take care of it anyway, right? He thinks that was certainly the original plan, until a shocking notification suddenly pops up on his phone, informing him that due to the extreme urgency of this invasion, the rewards for defeating monsters would be absolutely tripled, with triple the rewards now suddenly up for grabs. Gene Hook simply cannot ignore this monster invasion anymore. He quickly steps out onto the bustling street to see if he can take some monsters down and truly cash in. Meanwhile, brave security officials guide frantic people and desperately try to clear the dangerous streets, while the mighty Titan Guild battles endless hordes of monsters, running wild through the devastated city. The security line is already faltering and breaking due to the sheer number of monsters trying to push through, and it seems they are losing ground. Sango is rapidly running out of stamina to keep up this brutal fight, No matter how many he bravely takes down, more monsters just keep endlessly popping up. The guild members are already pushed to their absolute limits. And even though it briefly looks like they have the upper hand, things are definitely not looking too promising for them. The guild secretary watches the intense fight worriedly from behind the relative safety of the rear lines. Even though everything seems to be going well, thanks to the guild master, she can tell they're getting stretched thin. If only they had one more powerful hunter. To turn the tide, her mind wanders to a man the guild master found promising not too long ago. She takes her phone and calls Jin-hyuk. He's in the middle of fighting some goblins. Well, he picks up. She offers him a chance to fight with the Titan Guild, promising hefty compensation in return. He asks for 5 times the normal compensation, and she suggests they meet at a predetermined place to discuss more when they meet. She offers him 4 times the compensation instead, and he reluctantly agrees. She hands him a device that will keep track of how many monsters he kills, so they can calculate his contribution to the guild. If you make more than an average contribution to the fight, you'll get everything you're asking for. Now that he's got a chance to show off his abilities and get properly paid for it, he takes off toward the fight to lend a hand. The secretary watches him leave, wondering if he'll live up to the expectations that Sang-ah has of him. He was once able to take down an Indian by pure luck, but his skills are still uncertain. He arrives on the battlefield and immediately targets a rampaging ogre, shocking the crowd in one quick strike. He manages to kill it, leading everyone else to believe he must be at least an A-rank hunter. A-rank is close, he thinks, but I have to be stronger than an A-rank with my current abilities. He takes a moment to drink a mana potion to recharge. Thanks to Lucia's intense training, he's reached level 200 normally. He wouldn't be able to face an ogre, but as long as his mana doesn't run out, he should be able to keep up with an S-rank hunter. Right now, he has over 1,500 mana potions, which means all the monsters around him are just money makers. Elsewhere, Don takes down monsters alongside his guild members. He notices the monsters are drastically decreasing and turns to see a small group watching someone effortlessly take down massive monsters. Curious, he quickly checks on them and spots the one person he absolutely despises right now. Jin-hyuk. He screams orders of the stun hunters, telling them to stop daydreaming immediately and get back to fighting those terrifying monsters. Why is this guy even here, and who dared to invite him? Just the sight of Jin-hyuk alone reminds him of their last embarrassing encounter, where his most humiliating moment was broadcast all over the breaking news. That last time must have been nothing but pure luck. But this time, since he is all alone, there will be no problem taking him out and putting him firmly in his place. With that burning thought, he rushes straight toward Jin-hyuk, hoping to finally fix his nasty habit of always being in the absolute worst place at the wrong time. But unluckily for him, the Sarang hunter notices him far too early and masterfully counters his attack, sending him flying and knocking him out yet again. Sorry, but not today, Jin-hyuk thinks as he casually brushes off the commotion. Meanwhile, Sango stares down a massive, rampaging minotaur. His mana is almost completely gone, and he is out of stamina. The minotaur raises its colossal club to strike, just as Sango contemplates a tactical retreat to regain his stamina. But before it can land a hit, a powerful voice calls out behind him. Jin-hyuk suddenly jumps in from above and grabs the raging minotaur by its horn and slams it brutally into the ground. For a Sarang hunter to take down. A minotaur in just one single hit. It looks like his judgment about Gene Hook was absolutely spot on, as he effortlessly takes down the monster. Sango approaches to show his genuine appreciation for the help. Gene Hook shrugs it off, nonchalantly saying, "The guild master himself called me, and promised a hefty pay in return for my assistance. So there's really no need to thank me." Sango then takes this perfect chance to ask him again to join their guild, explaining that if you join forces with us, opportunities like this will just keep popping up for you. Gene Hook takes a thoughtful moment to consider it, and finally replies to his proposal that once they finish up with the remaining monsters, then he will think about joining their guild as they talk. Sango gets an urgent call from Hyena. She urges him to cast his gaze skyward, where the clouds have become pitch black, and the very atmosphere is ablaze, crackling fiercely with lightning strikes. Something immense and truly menacing hides within those clouds, and it certainly doesn't look like a friend. The terrifying creature unleashes lightning bolts down on everything, relentlessly targeting both powerful monsters and brave hunters. It damages buildings severely as it soars high above. It's simply too high in the vast sky, so their powerful skills cannot possibly reach it, leaving them with absolutely no way to attack. Sango then suggests they return to his guild to quickly assess the dire situation, inviting Jinnik to come along. Jinnik reluctantly agrees to join them, and they promptly reconvene within his private office. They immediately run a battery of various tests, only to discover that absolutely nothing they have tried can affect the beast or defend against its devastating attacks. Every single attempt to stop it has been nullified instantly, or completely destroyed. They quickly realize they desperately need something with immense firepower, capable of incredible long-range destruction. Lucia's name immediately springs to mind, and Sango quickly recognizes that there might just be a powerful way to bring it down. After all, as Jinnik departs to fetch the powerful Lucia, the cunning executives of the Titan Guild quickly gather together to discuss Sango's perceived favoritism toward the formidable C-ranker. The other frantic guild members brainstorm frantically for alternative methods to defeat the monster, hoping to do it without relying on Jinnik. But they soon find themselves with absolutely no other choice. All other strategies they consider are guaranteed to fail, leaving them with only one terrifying option: to trust the lone hunter who has a plan. They briefly consider calling the powerful Gyusha Guild, a large formidable group filled with A-rank and higher mages. But no, they realize the Gyusha Guild doesn't care about casualties. Inviting them would unfortunately lead to many needless deaths. The entire room then falls into a grave silence, as they reluctantly acknowledge their severely limited options. Meanwhile, Jinnik emerges from the portal with Lucia in tow, thanking her sincerely for agreeing to provide aid, and promising her as many sweet treats as her heart desires. In generous return, they ascend rapidly to the top of the Titan Guild headquarters, where Jinnik reveals the monstrous threat to her. Terrorizing their city, he asks if she can take it down, and she confidently assures him she absolutely can. The monster is truly immense, that she could hit it even with her eyes closed. It is a level 300 creature, the highest level ever recorded, astonishing, and she declares she can eliminate it effortlessly. But first, she needs a little assistance. The building's roof can't possibly withstand her power, so she asks Jinnik to prepare a formidable shield to absorb most of the impact, not wanting to see multiple buildings utterly destroyed. Jinnik quickly calls the guild leader to inquire about the potential damage. Once they manage to take down the colossal monster, Sango tells him not to worry about any collateral damage and to focus solely on bringing the creature down swiftly. With that settled, Jinnik prepares the shield, while Lukia charges 2 powerful arrows to strike the beast. She aims carefully and releases the arrows with precision, creating a massive shockwave that pushes Jinnik far back. Even with the shield, the 2 shots soar through the sky and land a direct hit on a monster perfectly, obliterating half its body from the devastating impact. The Titan Guild watches in awe from the ground, truly amazed that Jinnik managed to pull it off so effortlessly. Hunter Kong Jinnik continues to impress. The whiplash from Lukia's attack leaves smoking trails on the building's helipad. While it wasn't the time to hold back, this was excessive. Lukia, on the other hand, is disappointed that the monster was so weak, attributing her ease in defeating it to her immense strength. Regardless, the job is done, and it is time for her to head back. She hands Jinnik a tracker that monitors his points, showing a staggering 240 points. Before leaving, she warns him. Not to place much trust in others, especially when money is at stake. Truly, people's minds tend to cloud with greed. She advises him to be very wary, as she has learned from her many adventures. Jinnik assures her he will be fine and will handle anything that seems off. They part ways, and he heads down to the street, where he is met by Sango and his secretary. They quickly catch up with him. They demand to know how he managed to take down this formidable monster all by himself. Jinnik politely refuses to share, saying it is a secret, but an executive is furious. He cannot believe a mere C ranker could defeat such a colossal beast yet. Jinnik then shows them his monster tracker, displaying a truly substantial number of points, proving he actually took it down. Sango quickly intervenes and stops the executive, and then profusely apologizes to Jinnik for the outburst. The executive watches on in a fit of rage, feeling Sango favors a C ranker over his own guild members. He firmly decides it is time for a drastic change, believing Sango is hindering the guild's future. He pulls out his phone and dials an unknown number. By the very next day, rumors are spreading like wildfire throughout the city that an ordinary C ranker defeated the giant monster. Members of the Titan Guild are highly skeptical, but verifying this information is not too difficult. Word also circulates that the guild master personally offered Jinnik direct entry into the Titan Guild, which he shockingly turned down. He must be so confident in his skills to reject such a monumental offer from Sango himself. The rumors even reached the mighty Auron Guild, who learned that Indoan has been hospitalized after the recent monster invasion. Indoan is known for his incredibly impressive skills. It is then revealed he was defeated by the rumored S-rank hunter. If this is true, then the rumors hold serious weight. The Auron Guild scouts decide to meet with Jinnik to verify this information. He might have truly unlocked a hidden class, which is exceptionally rare for any hunter. If that is truly the case, they absolutely need to recruit him into their guild before another guild snatches him up, or they might have to eliminate him meanwhile. Jinnik sleeps soundly after the intense battle, having completely exhausted all his stamina. He passes out as soon as he gets the chance, and wakes up a full 2 days later, finally realizing the toll of his overexertion. He walks into his living room and finds that Lucia has created a massive mess. With all the snacks he had bought her, She managed to eat absolutely everything in just 2 days, with no food at all left in the fridge. When her only option, it seems, was to consume all the snacks. 2, because he hadn't yet opened up the portal for her. 3, leaving her unable to return to the dungeon dimension. For this truly confuses Jin Hyuk. 5, as he's never had to manually open the portal previously. 6, it has always been readily accessible for him. 7, he quickly heads to the attic, eager to prove to her that the portal is 8, in fact, wide open and waiting. 9, but this sight makes absolutely no sense to her at all. 10, since there was absolutely nothing there just moments ago. 11, she instructs him firmly to step far away from the dungeon door. 12 then reopens it, revealing astonishingly that there's absolutely nothing there again. 13, now that he's moved himself back. 14, Jin Hyuk is completely baffled. 15, as he has only ever seen the dungeon standing wide open. 16, Lucia theorizes that the dungeon responds solely to his presence. 17, suggesting it's imprinted directly and uniquely on him. 18, perhaps meaning it could have literally fallen right onto his head. 19, luckily, it was only a failed, harmless spell. 20, decides not to dwell on that strange thought for long. 21, and instead, promptly orders some food for both of them to enjoy. 22, Lucia wonders aloud how he managed to find his way back to the house. 23, after they so spectacularly defeated that monstrous creature. 24, she explains that she deliberately placed a recognition. 25, a powerful suppression spell on his house. 26, which should have rendered it completely impossible for anyone to locate. 27, Jin Hyuk asks why she would ever cast such a powerful spell on his own house. 28, she reveals that strange individuals from some infamous guild. 29, named the Auron Guild, had been visiting while he was deep asleep. 30, and this truly annoyed her greatly. 31, enough to ensure they could never, ever return again. 32, Jin Hyuk is perplexed, wondering why those massive, renowned guilds. 33, would suddenly be searching so fervently for him. 34, he quickly pulls out his phone. 35, eager to discover what exactly transpired during his deep slumber. 36, the very first headline he sees instantly grabs his undivided attention. 37, news of him defeating that enormous monster has gone absolutely viral. 38, a video is rapidly circulating. 39, that clearly shows him courageously fighting alongside the legendary Titan. 40, Guild, and it seems he's become incredibly famous overnight. 41, this newfound public attention is incredibly problematic. 42, as his own greed in using Lucia's immense power. 43, has placed him squarely under an unwanted, harsh spotlight. 44, the hunter industry is intensely territorial, he knows. 45, and powerful, strong competitors are always swiftly eliminated. 46, he resolves firmly not to dwell on the unfortunate past any longer. 47, with Lucia finished eating, they quickly return to the dungeon. 48, ready to deliver all their precious loot to the waiting dwarf. 49, thanks to Lucia's incredibly powerful, devastating shot. 50, the monster's massive body is far too damaged to salvage, leaving them only with its severed head. The old man fumes, clearly annoyed that Lucia overdid it and totally wasted his precious materials, exposing the raw animosity brewing between them. But Jinwoo quickly steps in, breaking up their heated argument, as he turns to ask the skilled dwarf if he can forge something amazing from the corpse. The dwarf promptly digs into the head, extracting a unique organ, an incredible part that lets it generate powerful lightning. And with this fantastic discovery, Jinwoo can now enchant his trusty baseball bat to create lightning. Channeling its electric power, he then politely asks the dwarf how he wishes to be compensated. But the dwarf only has one simple request: for Lucia to instantly leave his workshop. Angered by this demand, Lucia trembles with absolute rage, and Jinwoo quickly has to calm her volatile temper down by promising her even more delicious sweets after barely preventing her from shooting a massive hole straight through the dwarf's head. With that, he heads straight back into the bustling city to quickly buy her the promised sugary treats. As he makes his casual way back home, Jinwoo suddenly senses something sinister lurking in a dark alleyway. It definitely feels like someone is actively tracking him. With a swift flick, he cleverly drops his groceries behind a sturdy wall, then calls out to the hidden creep following him, "Hey, I can totally see you, you know." A surprised voice immediately answers back, clearly shocked that Jinwoo even noticed him there at all. Then in an instant, a mysterious figure suddenly appears out of nowhere, rushing straight at him, fiercely swinging a deadly sword. Jinwoo barely manages to block the swift attack, using his trusty bat, leaving the newcomer utterly astonished that Jinwoo could even perceive his presence, thus confirming all the wild rumors that Jinwoo is far more than just an ordinary C-rank hunter. Guess I'll have to show you exactly how ordinary I truly am, Jinwoo thinks to himself as he powerfully pushes the attacker back, then leaps at him for an explosive counterattack. Since the attacker desperately wants to keep his identity a secret, Jinwoo resolutely decides he'll just have to beat some serious sense out of him until he finally spills all the beans. However, the cunning attacker has a totally different plan. He uses a powerful skill to turn himself completely invisible. Jinwoo can just faintly feel his sneaky presence, enough to skillfully dodge and block most of the incoming attacks. But he knows he cannot possibly keep this up forever. If only he had his usual powerful bat. But the old dwarf is still working on that. So he's stuck with just a regular aluminum bat. This is going to be a very long day. He thinks, realizing he desperately needs to make a run for it. Just as he finally decides to make his escape, the mysterious hooded attacker suddenly attaches a tracking device right to his shirt. Jinhook sprints quickly toward a crowded area, hoping he can hide, but the attacker's sinister device allows him to track his every single move. The trail ominously leads to a bathroom in a department store. Perfect, he mutters to himself. Camouflaging himself, he aggressively kicks open a stall door, ready to eagerly pounce. Except there's absolutely nothing there but the tracker, stuck right to the wall. Seriously, a bathroom trap. Jinhook instantly realizes he's been played, just as he's about to kick himself for falling for that trick. The assassin charges up a powerful fireball, aiming it straight at Jinhook and the poor innocent kid who just wanted to use the toilet. With absolutely no time to spare, Jinhook instantly throws up a shield to protect them both. The assassin skillfully uses the smoke as cover to make his escape. Great! A blazing fireball and a runaway. He thinks to himself, shaking his head angrily as he tries to catch his breath. A mysterious object suddenly stabs right through the assassin's chest, killing him instantly. Oops. Jinhook says, blinking in utter surprise. I honestly didn't mean to kill him. Just as he's lamenting this bizarre situation, a holographic status window pops up right in front of him. It acknowledges this unexpected murder, but labels it officially as an act of self-defense. Well, that's certainly a relief. He sighs, but I could have certainly done without all that drama. Before he can process it any further, two stern detectives quickly approach him, asking him questions about the bizarre incident. He tries his absolute best to cooperate, explaining how he was just innocently minding his own business when utter chaos suddenly erupted, luckily, since he didn't miraculously receive the villain trait. The detectives surprisingly don't suspect him of any foul play. They confirm he was clearly acting in self-defense and promptly let him go, but not before sternly warning him not to mention these specific words. Was it murder, or was it pure self-defense? A true hero, or perhaps a villain in disguise? They hand him a device that will monitor his every word, every move. Oh, fantastic, a glorified babysitter. He mutters under his breath as they finally let him go. As Jin Hyuk heads home, he can't shake off the unsettling feeling that he's suddenly become the absolute center of attention within the bustling hunter community. Meanwhile, the detectives speculate amongst themselves, noting how he managed to effortlessly block a powerful attack, all while diligently protecting a child, and even took down a formidable high-level hunter. There's no possible way this guy is just a C rank. They murmur in disbelief. I only hope he doesn't do anything to ever lose our trust. Back at home, Jin Hyuk eagerly checks out his brand new class, the Powerful Inquisitor. It seems to perfectly build off his previous cleric abilities, but with an exciting twist, his skills are now more self-focused, allowing him to act like a formidable tank while continuously healing himself. Plus, he gains the incredible ability to see the karma of others. Oh, fantastic. Now I can judge people on top of everything else. He quipped, shaking his head at the sheer irony of all, excited to immediately test out his brand new powers. He swiftly returns to the dwarf's bustling workshop. As promised, his weapon has been masterfully enchanted to effortlessly send out electrifying lightning attacks. All he has to do is simply think about it, and it sends out up to 3 powerful charged lightning blasts. Talk about absolutely shocking, he chuckles, already envisioning the chaos he could powerfully unleash. However, Lucia seems far less impressed. I can't sense any holy power from you now, she says, looking genuinely concerned. What did you do in the human world? He shrugs, explaining he can't possibly share much. All because of the pesky monitoring device. The dwarf, overhearing everything, offers to completely dispose of the device. If Jin Hyuk completes one simple task, retrieve a specific item from a truly dangerous location, using a special compass he provides him. A rookie, dangerous, I like it. Sounds like a fun day, Jin Hyuk exclaims, grinning wildly. This seemingly little errand has dragged Jin Hyuk to a treacherous, mountainous path that seemed to defy all logic. Steep cliff, impossible terrain. Who in their right mind would ever come here willingly? Yet, remarkably, there he was, equipped with little more than some basic hiking gear, rappelling into what seemed like an endless void. All this insane effort just to unearth some meager ores. That ancient dwarf truly had absolutely no shame, sending him straight into a deadly trap for a few glistening rocks. Meanwhile, Lucia was absolutely living her best life, as Jin Hyuk wrestled desperately with his cumbersome gear and struggled desperately not to plunge to his doom. She simply leaned back, utterly unconcerned, watching his desperate struggle as if it were peak entertainment. Highly amused by his plight, she playfully teased him, questioning if he was truly struggling that intensely, just to descend, because from her viewpoint, this was truly nothing, and she made sure he felt it. If he aimed to emerge from this chasm in one piece, he had one crucial job: absolutely follow her lead, adhere strictly to all her instructions, and under absolutely no circumstances should he dare to act alone, unless he genuinely desired to experience a tragic, yet somehow slightly comedic demise. And then, as if to undeniably prove just how simple it actually was, she took one bold step forward, then simply jumped. No ropes whatsoever, no shred of hesitation. Just a breathtakingly confident leap into the dark abyss. Jin Hyuk had barely a moment to fully react, before she was already effortlessly scaling down the sheer rock face, using nothing but her bare hands, landing with absolute, seamless effortlessness, as if she had gracefully done this countless times before. Oh, she absolutely had to brilliantly show off. Jin Hyuk could only profoundly sigh, knowing perfectly well he couldn't possibly just copy her moves. At least, not yet. Certainly not without shattering a few bones in the painful process. Lucia, however, saw things quite differently. From her unique perspective, truly saw things differently. He wasn't just being reasonably careful. He was absolutely coddling himself, being a baby. If he continued to act like some fragile porcelain doll, he would never truly grasp what his body was, astonishingly capable of achieving, with an incredibly mischievous grin spreading across her face. She playfully remarked that he was simply limiting his own potential, fearing absolutely nothing at all, truly. And then, just to undeniably drive her crucial point home, she dove head first into the dark, gaping pit. Completely unbothered, Jin Hyuk gazed after her, torn between pure admiration and sheer irritation. It was unbelievable, but perhaps she was genuinely right. His body had undergone a radical transformation, making him much stronger and incredibly faster than before. He just wasn't accustomed to perceiving himself in this powerful new light. Perhaps he was simply being far too cautious. Taking a deep, resolute breath, he deliberately loosened his grip on the rope and muttered a quick prayer to himself before completely letting go. The instant he plunged into a free fall, adrenaline surged through his entire system. The wind roared violently past his ears, and for a fleeting second, a sliver of doubt began to creep in. But as he rapidly neared the bottom, pure instinct powerfully took over, guiding his hands and legs. He expertly braced himself against the rugged, rocky walls, slowing himself down precisely enough to land gracefully beside Lucia, completely unscathed. Yet she barely looked even slightly impressed. Arms crossed, she coolly raised a single brow, and dryly remarked that it had certainly taken him long enough. Jin Hyuk exhaled, half in profound relief, and half in utter annoyance. He admitted grudgingly that she just might have had a very valid point. Lucia simply smirked, her confidence utterly unwavering. She always had a point, and as much as he desperately wanted to argue, the truth of the matter was undeniably clear. He was truly not a normal human anymore. He had been holding himself back for absolutely no good reason, and judging by the highly satisfied look on Lucia's face, she had known it perfectly all along, taking a well-deserved break in the middle of their intense mission. They settled themselves on a steep cliff, gazing out at the vast, endless landscape stretching far below. The conversation naturally drifted toward what had happened outside, and Lucia, with her arms crossed, voiced her serious concern. that simply removing the device might ultimately end up getting Jin Hyuk into serious trouble. But the eccentric old dwarf had been oddly, incredibly confident about it, steadfastly saying it would be absolutely fine. That meant there had to be an ingenious way. For all his grumpy, irritable outbursts, that particular blacksmith was undeniably incredibly talented. Even Lucia, who made absolutely no effort to hide her deep distaste for the old man, had to grudgingly admit that when it came to complex things like this, the dwarf was surprisingly reliable, though she still truly didn't like him. But she truly had no choice but to implicitly trust his exceptional craftsmanship. Shifting the focus of their conversation, Lucia's keen curiosity turned to something entirely else. Specifically, the karma values. Specifically, the ones directly tied to Jin Hyuk's brand new class. She then asked about her own current level, and after a quick, precise check, he informed her that she had exactly 82, the highest score among the three of them. Jin Hyuk himself sat at 64 points, while the old dwarf clocked in at 72. These numbers, however, didn't surprise her at all, considering the brutal life she had been forced to lead. It made perfect sense that she possessed the highest karma. She'd done everything humanly possible just to survive. Even so, the gap between her and Jin Hyuk was a surprisingly mere 20 points, and he had only killed one single person so far. Lucia, on the other hand, had long since lost count of her own deeds. That striking thought led her to an interesting comparison. In the strange world she used to inhabit, there were true saints, beings capable of distinguishing good from evil, with just a single glance. Jin Hyuk immediately dismissed the very idea that he was anything even remotely close to a saint, and she agreed with him without a moment's hesitation. That wasn't the main point, though. She was merely pointing out that the ability to gauge evil existed universally across different worlds. Not that she cared much about that particular detail right now. Truthfully, she had very little interest in wasting time, searching for a mind just to satisfy the old fart's whims. What had truly interested her, however, were Jin Hyuk's surprising new abilities. She was eager to thoroughly analyze and understand them, and when he asked her why she was so deeply invested, she simply shrugged her shoulders lightly and replied that she simply found him immensely entertaining. And she wasn't wrong. Watching him figure things out was much more interesting indeed than staying entirely holed up in an abandoned dungeon. They clearly needed a better way to truly understand karma values. And Lucia, ever practical, had a simple solution. Go outside, she suggested, and do some real-world experiments. Jin Hyuk hesitated for a moment. He felt a little bad about pausing their original mission for the old dwarf, but Lucia truly had a valid point. Staying cooped up in the dungeon with just the two of them wouldn't give him any deeper understanding of his budding abilities. After a brief moment of thoughtful contemplation, he reached a hand into his pocket, even if he felt a slight pang of guilt about ditching the dwarf's urgent request. His surging curiosity clearly won out as he fished out a returned stone. He held it carefully between his fingers. This mystical stone had been specifically enchanted to instantly transport him to a hidden spot just outside. With a powerful squeeze, he shattered it. A shimmering dimensional rift tore open right where they stood. Lucia barely had a split second to react before she was completely swallowed up by the swirling portal, her initial surprise vanishing into the great unknown. Quite astonishingly, using that stone actually made Jin Hyuk's karma value rise. Just a few moments later, the unlikely duo found themselves smack in the middle of a vibrant city street. Massive crowds surged in waves and neon signs brilliantly flickered to life, as the whole air intensely buzzed with restless energy. Lucia, utterly unfazed by all the surrounding chaos, casually took a relaxed sip of her drink, while Jin Hyuk sat directly across from her, silently agonizing. He was panicking over how her so-called camouflage magic was utterly failing its intended purpose. She had confidently assured him earlier that she was actively using magic to expertly disguise her true appearance and seamlessly blend into the bustling crowd technically. She wasn't lying at all. Her pointed ears and other otherworldly features were cleverly hidden. But the delicate illusion of human clothing didn't change the undeniable fact that she looked far too perfect. Her exquisite silver hair, her absolutely flawless skin, and her utterly effortless grace always drew so much attention, no matter what she decided to wear. Every single passerby instantly stole glances at the stunning woman, sitting across from Jin Hyuk. Some were even outright staring. Lucia most certainly had absolutely no complaints with a mischievous, sly smirk. She calmly pointed out that her captivating beauty simply could not be concealed. Even with magic, camouflage truly had its definite limits. After all, Jin Hyuk desperately wanted to disagree. Oh, he really did. But even he had to grudgingly admit that she was probably the most breathtakingly beautiful woman he had ever laid eyes on. And the worst part, she knew it perfectly well, deciding to swiftly move on before she grew even more smug. Lucia quickly steered their conversation to something far more important: their urgent investigation into karma values. So far, their findings have been remarkably straightforward. Committing terrible deeds definitely racks up your karma score, and it didn't always take something incredibly extreme to do so. Jin Hyuk himself had gained a single karma point just for breaking his promise to the old dwarf. Apparently, it wasn't just about physically hurting people. Betrayal, deception, and even sheer irresponsibility could significantly contribute. On the other hand, harm that was consensual, like a fight in pure self-defense, wouldn't raise your karma score at all. The exact scale of how karma operated still wasn't crystal clear. But one critical rule truly stood out. Once a person's karma score exceeded a staggering 200 points, they were officially and unequivocally labeled as a villain. At that very pivotal point, killing them wouldn't even be counted as a shocking murder. It would be definitively classified as legitimate self-defense. Essentially, the system itself stopped seeing them as truly human. And considering the gravity of that, even Lucia and the old dwarf hadn't even reached 100 points yet. Getting past 200 wasn't just about having a few bad habits. It took truly dedicated and active villainy. Jin Hyuk had been quietly scanning people throughout the entire day, checking for any ridiculously high karma values he could find. So far, the most he'd seen from a regular, everyday pedestrian was somewhere around 50 points if they wanted any real data. They were absolutely wasting their time in a peaceful public area. They needed to go somewhere much darker. Thankfully, the city had just the perfect place in mind. The red light district, as night finally began to fall. The streets instantly lit up with a dazzling kaleidoscope of neon signs. Flashy billboards and pulsing rhythmic music mingled with the unmistakable smell of cheap alcohol. This was where the city's true underbelly genuinely thrived. Lucia's reaction was one of immediate, pure fascination. The dazzling lights and the vibrant, bustling energy. Earth certainly had its fair share of amazing wonders, and this was undeniably one of them. But as she observed the lively, bustling crowd, a curious thought suddenly struck her. Shouldn't people be more worried about getting viciously attacked by terrifying monsters? In her world, absolutely nobody in their right mind would ever gather in such a bright, noisy place unless they literally had a death wish. Jin Hyuk barely managed to hold back a weary sigh as he patiently explained that Earth simply didn't work that way. Monsters didn't casually roam around the streets like they did with terrifying regularity in her world. There were no sudden ambushes around every corner. No lurking dangers, at least not of the magical, fantastical kind. Lucia wrinkled her nose, feeling quite unimpressed. The atmosphere here just felt completely off. It was heavy and felt so artificial. Nothing like the crisp wilderness she was used to. But still, the city lights were certainly pretty. Every world truly had its own bright sides. After all, as they walked through these seedy streets, a rather shady-looking barman then approached them. He wore an exaggerated, wide grin. His eyes lingered a little too long on Lucia. He showered her with an endless stream of compliments, calling her the most stunning lady to ever grace these parts. Then, with a truly eager tone, he mentioned an ongoing special event at his bar. Beautiful women could enjoy up to 5 amazing cocktails, completely free, but Lucia barely acknowledged him. Without even breaking her determined stride, she simply shoved him aside, then continued walking. But before she could even get far, Jin Hyuk placed a firm hand upon her shoulder, stopping her right there in her tracks. He then suggested quite casually that they take a moment to enjoy those free drinks, insisting that it would be an utter waste to turn down such a generous offer, and the barman was now practically glowing with sheer excitement, eagerly led them inside, promising that Lucia would receive the very best service the establishment possibly had to offer. After walking around all day long and only encountering ordinary, mundane people with their unimpressive karmic values, Jin Hyuk finally found just what he was looking for. The barman, an irredeemable villain indeed, had a whopping 300 negative karma points. Floating above his head, they then settled in at the bar. The duo received their drinks, then took a quick sip. The cocktail had a delightful, sweet, smooth flavor, something Lucia immediately and completely approved of. Meanwhile, the barman stood just a few steps away, quietly snickering darkly to himself. Those two had absolutely no idea what they had just consumed. A single drop of that poison-laced liquor was enough to paralyze an average person completely. There was absolutely no escaping it now. The moment he saw them truly relaxing, he suddenly signaled a waiting group of thugs. Waiting in the shadows, they then stepped forward. Their focus was locked directly on Jin Hyuk. The plan was simple: to take him out first. Jin Hyuk, however, barely acknowledged their presence. He simply took another relaxed sip and asked if they were truly sure this was the path they actually wanted to take. The thugs hesitated just for a split second, confused by his incredibly calm demeanor. That was when the sudden realization hit them. The poison simply wasn't working on him, all thanks to his incredible status effect resistance. The so-called fast-acting toxin was nothing more than an overpriced juice. What a joke. Without a moment's warning, Jin Hyuk spun around and delivered a bone-crushing uppercut to the nearest thug, sending him staggering backward. Finally, some proper action had begun. It had been quite a while indeed. since he could properly stretch out his powerful limbs. And these street rats looked like the perfect warm-up now. With a confident smirk, he pulled back and threw another devastating punch, this time knocking 2 goons out at once, sending them flying like limp rag dolls. A 2-for-1 deal, that's really not bad at all. The remaining thugs barely had a moment to react, before he pivoted sharply, shifting his weight for a truly brutal kick. His foot connected with another thug's face, and with just a single devastating strike, the man immediately collapsed, unconscious before he even hit the hard floor. Meanwhile, Lucia's eyes fluttered open, as the effects of the paralytic poison finally wore off, groggy but still alert. She turned her head to quickly assess the situation, only to find a pile of unconscious bodies scattered across the entire bar floor. Confused, she glanced over at Jin Hyuk. He simply shrugged his shoulders, mentioning that he was just cleaning up some trash casually. The barman, now visibly sweating profusely, decided it was time to bring out his ultimate trump card. With a desperate, echoing yell, he signaled for his strongest fighter to step in. A towering man with a fierce buzz cut cracked his knuckles as he removed his jacket, muscles bulging powerfully through his shirt. This wasn't just some random thug at all. He was clearly a formidable fighter. The moment he charged forward with impressive speed, Jin Hyuk and Lucia, standing together, watched him with utter, chilling indifference. Jin Hyuk kept his gaze locked intently on the approaching brute, meticulously analyzing his every move, while Lucia, completely unfazed by the chaos, casually reached for another shot of her potent poison cocktail and nonchalantly asked if he needed any help. Jin Hyuk simply waved her off, dismissing her offer, asserting one more thug wasn't enough to make him break a sweat. Buzz Cut, however, finding this disrespectful, was far from amused hearing the duo talk about him, as if he were merely some insignificant background character. Enraged beyond belief, he swung his heaviest punch, aiming it straight for Jin Hyuk's face with full force, only for his massive fist to be stopped midair, caught by a perfectly timed, lightning-fast grab. No matter how much he strained and struggled, pushed or desperately twisted, he couldn't budge Jin Hyuk an inch. A truly terrifying realization suddenly dawned on him. This wasn't just some random, ordinary troublemaker. The sheer, unimaginable strength behind that grip meant only one thing. Jin Hyuk had to be a powerful hunter, but that truly didn't make any sense at all. If he was strong enough to be a hunter, a true powerhouse, why was he wasting his precious time in a dingy bar, fighting mere low-level criminals, while Buzz Cut desperately, frantically, tried to figure out a way out of this impossible situation? Jin Hyuk casually tightened his grip ever so slightly, until a sickening, bone-shattering crack echoed through the bar. A scream of pure, unadulterated agony ripped from Buzz Cut's throat, as multiple bones in his hand shattered completely all at once. But Jin Hyuk was not nearly done yet. To completely shut him up, he followed up with a devastating punch, aimed straight to the man's mouth with brutal precision. Buzz Cut flew backward like a lifeless rag doll, crashing violently into a line of sturdy bar stools, his momentum finally stopping its destructive path, as he slumped helplessly against the scattered debris, with every last one of the goons taken care of. Only one last piece of scum remained standing. The terrified barman, Jin Hyuk, moved like a wild, untamed beast, closing the distance between them in a flash, before locking the frightened man into a deadly chokehold. The villain's windpipe nearly collapsed under the force, under the relentless, crushing pressure, as he clawed frantically at Jin Hyuk's arm, struggling desperately for air, but mercy wasn't on the table. Then effortlessly lifting the barman off the ground. He cut off his oxygen completely. The interrogation had truly begun. And truly, what kind of interrogation would it be? Without a few introductory warm-up hits. Jin Hyuk truly didn't hold back at all. Fists rained down relentlessly without hesitation, painting the very bar walls with the bartender's blood. By the time his work was finally done, his own knuckles were absolutely dripping red, and the man's face was swollen entirely beyond recognition. Only when he felt truly satisfied did he finally get to the really real questions. It was truly obvious this wasn't the bartender's first time pulling off something quite like this. To run an entire operation like this under the radar, he absolutely had to have someone backing him up. Yet even with his face barely intact at all, he still continued to deny any involvement. With any sort of bigger power, there was simply no way a worthless thug like him could repeatedly spike drinks and abduct women without getting caught, and those hired gangsters. They weren't just some ordinary street-level punks. Someone powerful had to be pulling the strings. Jin Hyuk narrowed his eyes, scrutinizing, giving the barman one last final chance to talk. The villain remained incredibly stubborn, shook his head. Either he was ridiculously loyal, or whoever was truly behind this was far more terrifying than the beating he was taking. Now, there was only one clear way to find out. Without any sort of warning, Jin Hyuk firmly grabbed one of the barman's feet and immediately started pulling. The villain thrashed, panic setting in deep as he screamed and struggled. Jin Hyuk remained completely unfazed, calmly and coolly explained that he was simply just helping him find the inner motivation to finally talk. The barman tried desperately to act tough, forcing out a weak, pathetic declaration. That violence would not truly make him talk. Jin Hyuk strongly and clearly disagreed. But before he could escalate things even further, Lucia stepped in with a look of pure exasperation. She told him to step aside, quit the barbaric, overcomplicated methods, and move aside. Jin Hyuk half-heartedly, but let her take over. Lucia calmly and gracefully raised her hand, manifesting a mysterious and powerful force that shimmered ominously in her palm. She brought it close to the barman's face, and in an instant his expression shifted. The sheer terror drained away, replaced by a strange sense of ease. Even if his ghastly appearance remained, a few moments of silence passed, as the power seeped into his system. And then, out of nowhere, his face twisted into something deranged. His eyes darted wildly, as he suddenly blurted out a question. Were they sent by an organization called Ultron? His voice cracked with paranoia, insisting that, no matter how much trouble Ultron stirred up, it was already too late. Lucia tilted her head. That wasn't the reaction she expected. Sure, she meant to loosen his tongue, but she hadn't planned on making him a complete lunatic. Well, at least it worked. The barman kept rambling, his words spiraling further into madness. He sneered as he declared that Ultron was insignificant. His formidable tyrant guild would wipe out every last one of their enemies. And just like that, the truth revealed itself. The tyrant guild, Jin Hyuk's eyes darkened. This situation was bigger than he initially thought. Now that the guild's name was on the table, he pressed forward, demanding to know what made them so confident that they could massacre their enemies. The barman, practically drooling at this point, let out a crazed chuckle. His answer was simple. They had Alonzo elixir. Jin Hyuk frowned. That name meant nothing to him. What the hell was he talking about? A few minutes later, the police arrived to investigate the incident. But by then, the pair had vanished. Jin Hyuk and Lucia had already slipped away. What started as a simple bar brawl had somehow managed to unexpectedly lead them to uncover a massive conspiracy, one that reached all the way to the top, with a major guild secretly pulling the strings. As they hurried through the dimly lit streets, Lucia explained the horrifying truth. Alonzo Elixir, a shocking revelation. It was no mere ordinary performance enhancer. This was a potent drug designed to double the user's stats. But its creation demanded a horrific, unspeakable cost. For countless young women were mercilessly sacrificed. She had certainly heard tales of dark practices before, but never in her wildest, most terrifying nightmares did she imagine a guild from Earth, of all places, would be capable of producing anything so utterly sinister. The sheer depravity was almost unfathomable, truly. Yet, this dark reality was not entirely new to her. Back in her own world, Alone's elixir had existed then too. There, it was infamously known as the Queen's Tear, a name that bore a profoundly heavy, painful, and deeply personal weight for her. One of her closest friends had tragically been sacrificed for it when they were much younger, years later. After she had finally reached platinum rank herself, Lucia had personally, ruthlessly wiped out the entire organization responsible for that drug's production. There was no mercy, absolutely no room for negotiations. She had burned them all completely to the ground. That explained precisely why she had been so grim. Ever since their departure from the bar, the very moment she heard the name Alone's Elixir, she already knew exactly what had to be done. Now, the critical question lingered: what next? The barman had already fearfully spilled that the horrifying elixir was almost complete. If they truly wanted to stop its dark creation, they desperately needed to take down the Tyrant Guild before its nefarious production was finalized. Meanwhile, back at the now quiet bar, long after the police had finally left the scene, a man dressed in all black stood silently in the shadows, reporting the entire incident to his superiors. His mask and dark glasses covered most of his face, but his sharp, analytical, calculating tone left absolutely no doubt about his efficiency. Based on his thorough investigation, this clearly was not an internal dispute at all. What was truly strange was that the perpetrators had only killed the barman and then left. This wasn't a tactic used by any rival guilds or any of their usual enemies. Something simply didn't add up. His orders were crystal clear. Find out precisely who had interrupted their operation. And soon, the masked man was utterly confident. Whoever these audacious perpetrators were, they simply wouldn't stay hidden for very long. But the Tyrant Guild wasn't the only one making powerful moves. At the Titan Guild, the air was thick with tension. Their top leadership was currently away on vital business. But that certainly did not stop their operations from relentlessly churning. The incredibly efficient secretary, Lee Haina, had just triumphantly wrapped up overseeing their crucial operations. In bustling Hong Kong, the results had been nothing short of excellent. If they could only maintain this impressive momentum, they might even seriously consider expanding their recruitment efforts, aiming for a staggering 15% more guild members by all accounts. The Titan Guild was undeniably thriving, but their powerful CO, Sango, the formidable leader of the Titan Guild, was not feeling well at all. He had just received startling news concerning Alone's legendary elixir. As anticipated, Even an exceptionally competent individual like Lee Haina had absolutely never heard a single whisper about it before this moment. The mysterious association had been working tirelessly hard to effectively keep its very existence completely hidden under wraps. To their immense regret, unfortunately, Lee Haina's immediate return to Korea would simply have to be delayed, as there was still urgent and pressing guild business remaining overseas, meaning Sango would be forced to handle these critical matters completely on his own, without wasting a single precious moment. He immediately issued an urgent, absolute order to the entire Titan Guild, and it was to be effective immediately without any delay. The mighty Titan Guild was officially declaring full-scale, devastating war against the formidable Tyrant Guild. A sudden and shocking declaration sent powerful shock waves rippling violently through the entire guild. A strategic move like this was not just incredibly risky. It truly was an outright, all or nothing gamble for their future. Lee Haina, ever the calm and reasonable voice of absolute reason, immediately demanded far more specific details, declaring such a monumental war without even consulting their top executives. And completely without a clear strategy, it was utterly reckless, even by the daring standards of CEO Sango himself. But Sango was not budging. He profoundly knew that failing to act immediately now would tragically only lead to an even greater, uncontainable chaos later. If the critical information he had painstakingly received was indeed correct, by the moment the entire world finally discovered the truth about Alone's elixir, it would tragically be far, far too late for anyone to intervene. Lee Haina, still noticeably skeptical, pressed Sango intensely for even more critical information. What exactly, she urgently wondered, had he truly learned that compelled him to take such an extreme and drastic step? Because declaring war on a formidable guild as powerful as Tyrant was absolutely not something they could easily simply undo later on. Sango did not provide an immediate answer right away. He profoundly understood the immense and unforgiving risks involved. He deeply knew this monumental decision would profoundly shake the entire guild to its core. But he also confidently knew they would not be standing completely alone in this monumental fight. The powerful Ultron Guild, and even the highest echelons of the government itself, would ultimately be firmly on their side, once the shocking truth inevitably came to light. Yet, even so, a war of this magnitude carried enormous, daunting risks. Haina suggested they absolutely must consult their top executives to first meticulously devise a strategic plan, and then act cautiously. But Ko Sanho had already fully made up his mind. His thoughts had, in fact, never been clearer, and he truly had no patience for any drawn-out meetings or tedious debates. One look at his determined expression told Haina absolutely everything she truly needed to know. He simply was not going to change his mind. Ko Sanho was a very cautious man by his very nature. But this time, he was utterly decisive. He completely understood Haina's deeply held reservations. Acting blindly was certainly never the ideal approach. But right now, there was absolutely no time left to hesitate. For now, he truly needed her to trust his critical call. They would keep the war declaration strictly confidential, strictly within their guild, while secretly conducting hushed internal investigations. The official announcement of war could easily come later. As for these crucial internal investigations, Ko Sanho already had a few key people in his mind. Certain individuals he desperately needed more information on. What had so suddenly prompted this radical shift in his stance? What exactly had pushed him to act with such suddenness? A single, urgent text message from Jin Hyuk. A dire warning about the Tyrant Guild's plan to create a sinister drug, one chillingly fueled by human sacrifice. Lucia, meanwhile, was comfortably lounging in Jin Hyuk's place, happily munching on an assortment of delicious sweets, while incessantly pestering him about all his grand plans. Honestly, she was just incredibly relieved to truly know that there were still some sane, upstanding individuals and reliable people remaining in this chaotic world, like the formidable San-ho, if no one had bravely stepped up to take down the Tyrant Guild. She would have absolutely handled it herself. And really, with how insanely, shockingly, inhumane the method for creating their vile elixir was, it absolutely needed to be stopped. Jin Hyuk, on the other hand, had a slightly different, nagging concern. He glanced over at the elf, who had been practically living inside his pantry, and asked when she planned on finally going back to the dungeon. Her response was a resounding, absolute no. Why would she ever return to some dull, boring dungeon, when she could instead join a thrilling raid against a villainous guild? Instead, she logically figured that if the notorious Tyrant Guild was crazy enough to concoct something so utterly sinister, then they definitely were not your average, everyday hunters. Even Jin Hyuk had to admit it. This was a challenge he couldn't face all by himself. At least not just yet anyway. That's when Lucia officially pledged her full support. She was absolutely all in on wiping out those scumbags together. Jin Hyuk genuinely appreciated the kind gesture, even though she truly didn't have to offer any help. Then suddenly a knock. Knock knock was heard at the door. Someone was at the door calling out his name loudly. Jin Hyuk really wasn't expecting anyone at all. So this was a totally unplanned and unexpected surprise. Could it be a delivery, perhaps? Or something else? Or perhaps it was even a masked man, the one deeply investigating what went down at the bar. That man possessed a truly magical compass, one that could track down people through their very blood, using the barman's blood as a vital link. He had locked onto the faint traces left on Jin Hyuk from the bar fight and this determined guy. He didn't even need a car. He navigated the city effortlessly, leaping across rooftops like it was just a casual stroll. His relentless hunt led him straight to an apartment complex, where he finally came to a complete stop, staring intently at the humble home right in front of him. The masked man felt something incredibly odd. For a split second, the entire house almost seemed hazy. But he quickly shook off that strange thought. It was probably just his wild imagination. More importantly, he immediately recognized the address. This was the very home of the renowned hunter, who took down the formidable Leviathan just a few days ago. That meant something significant. There could be a deep connection between the two incidents. Not that it truly mattered to him at all. His job was incredibly simple: to find a target and get answers without a moment's hesitation. He conjured a thick, menacing needle out of thin air. Its sinister aura was practically pulsing in the very air. He was definitely ready to persuade his target into answering a few pressing questions. Meanwhile, Jin Hyuk casually walked over to the door and asked who it was, just as expected. The masked man responded with a classic old excuse. He was here for a late delivery due to a traffic accident. Jin Hyuk was certainly no fool. A delivery showing up in the dead of night. Not a chance in hell on top of that. His house was powerfully shielded by a recognition, suppression spell of his own. making it practically impossible for anyone to locate. But if someone had managed to bypass such a powerful enchantment guarding the place, and still had the audacity to show up right here, boldly pretending to be a simple delivery man, there could only be one sinister reason. They were definitely up to something incredibly shady. Yet, Jin Hyuk still opened the door, remaining on incredibly high alert the very moment he did. The masked man wasted absolutely no time, immediately forcing his way inside the apartment, with a sinister-looking, menacing needle in his hand. As expected, this was no ordinary delivery. The intruder clearly had no intention of playing fair. But incredibly, Jin Hyuk had already anticipated every underhanded tactic. So when the deadly needle came flying for him, he effortlessly caught the attacker's wrist with speed. With a hint of amusement, he couldn't help but jokingly wonder if deliveries now came with complimentary poison darts. As some kind of bonus offering, the masked man, who had meticulously planned a perfect sneak attack, found himself, surprisingly, on the receiving end of the shock. Instead, before he could even begin to regain control, Lucia swiftly intervened, firing an arrow while urgently urging Jin Hyuk to step aside. The shot was absolutely devastating at such close range. Dodging it was completely impossible. The arrow struck with truly immense, shattering force, sending the stunned intruder hurtling right through the second-floor window with a crash. As he crashed outside, blood poured from the deep wound, the arrow burying itself further into his struggling body. But Lucia wasn't taking any chances, not one bit. Without a moment's hesitation, she prepared another shot, signaling clearly to Jin Hyuk that she fully intended to finish the job herself. Jin Hyuk, however, instantly dismissed the idea, insisting that he would handle it himself alone. He reasoned that the masked man had likely come specifically for him, due to the chaotic incident back at the bar. Lucia, completely unconvinced, pointed out that this opponent was no ordinary assassin at all. After all, he had miraculously survived a direct hit from one of her arrows. Meanwhile, outside the building, the masked man struggled intensely to remove the embedded arrow, his hands trembling violently from the significant blood loss. As he finally managed to pull it free with a gasp, a chilling wave of dread washed over him. The raw, devastating power behind that single strike had left him teetering on the brink, critically injured. He shuddered, a chilling realization dawning. The woman inside was definitely not someone to be underestimated, a true threat. Yet despite his agonizing wounds, his survival instinct screamed at him, urging him to escape. While he still had the chance, while he still drew breath. By the time Jin Hyuk finally moved to pursue, the intruder was already making a hasty, though clumsy, but utterly determined getaway, leaping with surprising agility across neighboring rooftops. Despite his clearly wounded and weakened state, Lucia glanced at Jin Hyuk, a silent question in her eyes, silently asking if he wanted to give chase, to hunt them down. But he found the entire idea far too troublesome, far too much effort. The masked man would certainly come for him again eventually. There's truly no need to rush, no need to hurry things. For now, something else entirely caught his keen attention. The man's karma value was absolutely staggering, over 900 points. The kind of terrifying number that only belonged to truly seasoned and merciless killers. Those who took precious lives as if they meant absolutely nothing. A genuine villain. Jin Hyuk couldn't possibly deny it. This was definitely going to be quite interesting indeed. And so the next day arrived with a new mission. and Jin Hyuk and Lucia found themselves comfortably seated inside a guild car, being escorted deep into the remote mountains. Their driver eventually pulled over, bringing the vehicle to a halt, gesturing toward a remote investigation site just up ahead. This wasn't just any random mission, any ordinary assignment. They've been specifically brought here, under guild leader Sango's urgent personal orders. But of course, that didn't change the undeniable fact that plenty of people within the mighty Titan Guild weren't exactly thrilled about Jin Hyuk's sudden presence. As they stepped out, Jin Hyuk scanned the gathered troops at the base of the investigation site. His quick, keen assessment instantly told him that at least half of them were A rank, hunters, or even higher, a formidable team of pure elites. And leading them, none other than that annoying guy, the very same irritating bastard who had once tried to pick a stupid fight with him. Executive Han Young-suk, looking utterly important, had apparently been put in charge of this entire operation. From the very moment Jin Hyuk spotted him, an undeniable sense of pure irritation immediately bubbled up. But this mission was definitely going to be an absolute headache. The executive wasted no precious time. He formally introduced himself with a flourish, and much to Jin Hyuk's utter surprise, he even shockingly brought up their last encounter from the airstrike. But what was even more unexpected was the dramatic shift in his attitude today. He appeared strangely amicable, almost overly polite, and Jin Hyuk couldn't help but notice the drastic difference in his personality, and found it profoundly suspicious. Sure enough, Young-suk awkwardly cleared his throat, and then quickly followed up with an apology, claiming he had just been overly enthusiastic indeed in his efforts for the guild last time. He hoped they could put the past behind them now, so it wouldn't affect today's critical mission. Jin Hyuk wasn't entirely convinced, but he decided to let it slide for now. Just moments later, the executive swiftly turned his attention to Lucia, clearly taken aback by her unexpected presence. He inquired about who she was exactly, clearly expecting some kind of immediate explanation. Jin Hyuk then casually introduced her as a highly skilled colleague, who certainly wouldn't be a hindrance. There was no mention of any extra personnel you see in a mission briefing at all, so Young-suk seemed visibly rattled by this news. He looked like he desperately wanted to protest. But before he could, the recon team they had sent ahead returned with their urgent report. With a curt nod, Young-suk quickly excused himself to hear what his scouts had to say right away. Of course, Jin Hyuk wasn't fooled by the executive's little performance. Apology or not, it didn't matter. The guy was still looking down on him, and Lucia just as before, probably assuming they were just a couple of low-ranking nobodies. It didn't matter how strong they actually were at all. This four-eyed bastard definitely had his own agenda, and his condescending attitude hadn't changed one bit in truth. Lucia had already picked up on the executive's obvious fake politeness, and she quietly checked with Jin Hyuk, wondering if they were really going to let this guy take the lead, but Jin Hyuk assured her calmly that it wasn't worth worrying about at all. They'd be fine, and besides, there was something far more interesting to deal with instead. Someone had been relentlessly tailing them since earlier on. It wasn't even remotely subtle. Both Jin Hyuk and Lucia had quickly noticed their not-so-covert pursuer a long time ago, but instead of directly confronting them, Jin Hyuk had calmly decided to just let it be. There was absolutely no rush, whoever it was. They might even prove to be useful later on. Just before the raid was about to finally begin, Jin Hyuk handed Lucia a brilliant magical crystal, a small but truly invaluable communication item With this powerful item in hand, they could easily stay in contact within a 10-kilometer range. They would definitely need it later on, so it was best for her to keep it very close. Meanwhile, young Seek suddenly returned, with a shocking confirmation of the initial reports. The evidence they found was undeniable. The notorious Tyrant Guild was heavily involved in heinous human trafficking, but rather than just sharing their vital intel, young Seek had yet another unexpected request. After thoroughly investigating the area, the recon team discovered an incredibly strong magical barrier surrounding the target building. The problem was only one person could break through it, without setting off every single alarm in the vicinity. And according to young Seek's careful assessment, that person was none other than the great Jin Hyuk. The young man immediately called him out on it. This wasn't a mere request, it was a blatant suicide mission. Walking straight into enemy territory all alone. That was as good as signing your own death warrant. But young Seek, ever the impartial team leader he claimed, kept a completely straight face. He even had the audacity to throw in some biting sarcasm, claiming that only the man who took down the Leviathan could possibly pull off such an impossible stealth mission, and to make it sound even more reasonable and convincing. He pointed out that Jin Hyuk specifically would probably have an easier time going in all alone, rather than working with unknown Tyrant Guild members he had never teamed up with before in his life. Of course, that was just another manipulative way of saying, "We're dumping all the immense risks on you." Good luck with that. It was painfully obvious that they thought they were cleverly outsmarting him, neatly shifting the entire burden onto his shoulders. But what they completely failed to realize was that this was exactly the kind of perfect situation Jin Hyuk had been secretly hoping for. With that thought firm in mind, he joined a select squad of elite Titan ghoul hunters and quickly headed toward the section of the barrier where they planned to forge an entry point. The strategy was deceptively straightforward. The magic team would conjure a small breach, just wide enough for Jin Hyuk to expertly slip through. The major problem was these so-called experts could only maintain the breach for mere precious seconds, which meant Jin Hyuk had to rush in at full, blistering speed. They swiftly arrived at the eastern flank of the facility, and without a moment's pause, the magic team sprang into action, struggling fiercely to maintain even the barest, slightest gap in the formidable barrier. Jin Hyuk didn't hesitate for an instant. He knew he was being played, deliberately manipulated, funneled deep into enemy territory like a mere disposable pawn. But strangely enough, he truly did not mind it. After all, what truly mattered was something else. His true interest lay not in the mission objectives themselves. He simply yearned to uncover exactly what the Tyrant Guild was secretly hiding deep within these mountains. The very moment the breach finally materialized, Jin Hyuk wasted not a second, dashing straight inside the barrier, his keen eyes gleaming with fierce excitement as he rapidly scanned the vast compound before him. But the instant he paused to summon his trusty, powerful bat, he noticed something profoundly strange. The base looked utterly different from how it appeared from outside. The formidable protective barrier must have been cunningly layered with a powerful distortion effect, cleverly disguising its true, menacing appearance. But that wasn't his immediate concern for now. First things first, he desperately needed to pinpoint the main entrance to this sprawling, massive base camp. However, after several tense minutes of wandering around, something truly felt very off indeed. There were far fewer guards than he had originally anticipated. This place was supposedly a maximum security facility, yet it felt eerily, suspiciously underprotected. Eventually, a vital clue emerged. He spotted a lone, unsuspecting guard stationed close by the barrier, seemingly standing guard over a hidden entrance. That was the very first real lead he had managed to find. After all, if someone was meticulously standing guard, there absolutely had to be something truly worth protecting behind them. Wasting absolutely no precious time, Jin Hyuk leaped into the air, raising his powerful bat high, pouring all his monstrous, raw strength into the devastating swing. The plan was simple: to swiftly knock the guard completely out, capture him, and get some much-needed answers. But just as his bat made contact, something unexpected happened. Instead of a satisfying impact, the guard simply vanished, dissolving into thin air like smoke. It was an illusion. Jin Hyuk stood there for a moment, blinking at the empty space where the guard had been. Well, that was disappointing. So much for interrogating someone. Now, it was entirely up to him to figure out how to get inside. Much to his surprise, the supposedly high-security facility had automatic doors like a freaking supermarket. The lack of proper defenses was almost laughable. No biometric scanners, no heavy-duty locks, not even a single CCTV camera in sight. It was as if the people running this place were so confident that the women they abducted had zero chance of escaping that they didn't bother with real security. Still, Jin Hyuk wasn't about to let his guard down. Just to be safe, he pulled out an insurance policy. From his inventory, he retrieved an EMP generator, a handy little device, crafted from the materials of electric-type monsters, and casually dropped it onto the floor. With this, any communications or security systems in the area would be fried. This was precisely the reason why he had left a magic communication crystal with Lucia beforehand, so they wouldn't lose contact despite the blackout. As the EMP took effect, and the compound was officially cut off from the grid, Jin Hyuk took a deep breath. Now it was time to get started on the real mission. From a distance, the masked man remained fixated on Jin Hyuk, silently observing his every move. The pieces were starting to come together. Jin Hyuk's connection to the bar incident and the Titan Guild was becoming clearer. But just like everyone else, the masked man had his own hidden motives. And for some reason, Jin Hyuk was a key factor in ensuring everything played out smoothly. Meanwhile, inside the facility, the consequences of Jin Hyuk's actions were already rippling through. The EMP he had set off didn't just disrupt security. It also ruined someone's gaming session. One of the idle guards had been engrossed in his phone, only to watch in frustration as his screen went black. Cursing the countryside's terrible signal, he grumbled about how his precious gaming time always seemed to get interrupted. Unfortunately for him, that would be the least of his worries. Before the realization even sank in, something red came hurtling toward him. A bat. Jin Hyuk didn't even bother swinging it. He had thrown it instead, the blunt tip, slammed mercilessly into the side of the man's face. And before he could react, the bat had already pierced through. The guard crumpled to the ground, out cold without missing a beat. Jin Hyuk activated auto recovery, summoning his weapon back into his grip. Finally, an opponent made of flesh and blood. The impact was absolutely brutal, sent blood splattering against the nearby wall as the body hit the smooth concrete floor with a dull thud. And yet this wasn't some trained hunter or elite fighter. He was just an ordinary man. An ordinary man with a karma value of 800. That number spoke volumes. If even a regular person here had committed enough atrocities to rack up such a score, then this place wasn't just corrupt. It was overflowing with inhuman scum. That meant Jin Hyuk could go all out. No hesitation, no second thoughts. Every single person involved in this twisted operation deserved nothing less than absolute annihilation. He moved forward without pause. He entered the locked gate and found himself in a long, dimly lit hallway lined with prison doors. The atmosphere was suffocating, thick with the stench of neglect. This had to be where they kept the abducted women. A quick glance into the cells confirmed his suspicions. The conditions were beyond inhumane. Each prisoner was shackled like a caged animal, stripped of dignity, awaiting their fate. They weren't just captives. They were resources for that accursed elixir. But before Jin Hyuk could even process his next move, a voice suddenly interrupted his thoughts. Someone was calling out, demanding to know who he was. Unlike the other cells, one actually held a man. Jin Hyuk's eyes narrowed as recognition sharply set in. The prisoner wasn't just anyone. He was wearing the distinct uniform of the Tyrant Guild. Despite his own desperate predicament, the captive wasted absolutely no time, warning Jin Hyuk to get out while he still possibly could. Whatever was truly happening inside this facility, it had already driven everyone to the brink of utter insanity. Staying any longer was a sure death sentence. Meanwhile, outside the facility, the so-called team leader was busy checking his watch, tracking the precise progress of Jin Hyuk's infiltration. It had been a considerable while since the young man entered, and things were still eerily, terrifyingly quiet. Maybe it was finally time to make a decisive move. Young Suk didn't hesitate for a moment. With a single, sharp order, his men were instantly set into motion, advancing toward the facility in a synchronized, relentless rush. Dressed in their sleek black jackets, the Titans swarmed forward like a mass of eager, hungry flies, ready to strike at the very first sign of trouble. But amidst all the rapid movement, one person remained completely still. That was Lucia. She stood there utterly unfazed by the rush of intense activity. Young Suk threw her a quick, questioning glance, still unable to figure out what her whole deal truly was. Unlike the rest of them in the squad, she didn't seem the least bit concerned about anything. Finally, as the four-eyed bastard joined his men outside, leaving Jin Hyuk to do all the dangerous work inside, Lucia mulled over her own crucial role in all this. Before the critical mission had even begun, Jin Hyuk had been incredibly clear. He would handle everything inside the building completely alone. That was his fight. Her job was distinctly different. She was here to carefully keep an eye on the Titans. They still had no idea what Hank Young-suk might try to pull in this situation, and that meant she had to stay fiercely vigilant. Jin Hyuk had warned her against getting too involved, but playing it safe had never been her style, and she wasn't about to start acting that way now. Back inside the ominous facility, the prisoner finally introduced himself as Young Dae-hoon to Jin Hyuk. If there was an award for Employee of the Month, he was definitely not getting it. Just outside the command center, a few Tyrant Guild members were passing the time with a card game, having the time of their lives. That was their peaceful moment, until their relaxed evening was rudely interrupted by the control room guy screaming about an emergency. Annoyed, the players turned to him, more irritated about their game being cut short than anything else. But the moment they heard what had actually happened, their frustration turned into alarm. The entire security system was down. Every single woman locked in the cells was missing. And worst of all, they had an intruder. The facility had been plunged into absolute chaos. With no time to waste, The team leaders quickly split their forces. One group headed straight for the Allron, the critical production room, while the other focused on tracking down the intruder and the missing captives. And as for the genius who had let this all happen, the control room grunt was now stuck with one job: find a way to contact headquarters, no matter what it took. Every single prison cell had been unlocked, freeing the abducted women, with their lives hanging by a thread. They wasted no time rushing toward the nearest exit. Leading the way was Dae-hyun, who knew the facility's layout like the back of his hand. He navigated the group through the most optimal path, getting them dangerously close to freedom, only for trouble to arrive. Right on cue in an instant, the tyrant boys had caught on to their escape. As soon as they spotted the fleeing women, they flooded into the area like a pack of rabid dogs. The first one to step in immediately recognized Dae-hyun, who was still directing the captives to safety. Without hesitation, he held his ground, ensuring the women could get through, while he stayed behind to buy them more time. One of the tyrant boys got ahead of himself, charging in alone with foolish confidence, with a bold claim that he would finish Dae-hyun, to finish it once and for all. But the moment his punch landed, reality dramatically shifted. A cruel reminder of Dae-hyun's specialty illusion ability. The attacker instantly seethed with rage, realizing he had fallen for such an unbelievably simple trick. Meanwhile, back at the fight, while Team 2 was struggling to chase down Dae-hyun and protect the captive women, Team 1 was having a far worse time elsewhere as well. Armed with little more than knives, they found themselves face to face with someone far more dangerous indeed, Jin-hyuk, and they had truly brought knives to a baseball bat fight. Jin-hyuk made incredibly quick work of them. His superior technique and astounding footwork turned their pathetic attempts at combat into an absolute joke with each powerful swing. He sent a tyrant operative crumbling to the ground. One clean hit per target every single time, as if he were just knocking down bowling pins. By the time the last one hit the floor, Jin-hyuk hadn't even broken a single sweat, judging by how desperately the thugs had been guarding the front gate. There was only one obvious conclusion. The mastermind had to be inside without wasting another second. Jin-hyuk instantly gained access to the room and cautiously stepped in. The sight that greeted him inside was even more vile than he had ever imagined. The tyrant organizations. Scum hadn't just been making the inhumane drug, no. They'd built an entire clandestine underground lab to mass produce it on an industrial scale. Human-sized test tubes disturbingly filled the entire space, each one containing a woman the tyrant organization had abducted for their twisted experiments. The sheer, terrifying scale of their operation was enough to make his stomach turn. But the worst part of all, at the absolute center of the lab, encased in protective glass, was the source of this nightmare, the horrifying monster, responsible for all this grief and suffering. Something was terribly wrong. Jin-hyuk tightened his grip on his bat. The creature showed absolutely no reaction to his presence. It remained completely still and unmoving. It was entirely possible that it was simply asleep. That was fine. It would just make things much easier. With a smirk tugging at his lips, he called forth, the lightning dwelling inside his weapon, electricity crackling through the air. Stepping into his batting stance, he prepared to take the ultimate swing. If everything went according to plan, he would end this tonight. Suddenly, without warning, tentacles burst from the tubes, lashing out at Jin-hyuk with terrifying speed. Glass shattered all around him as Aaron, A monstrous creature emerged from the wreckage. Roaring in fury, Jin Hyuk reacted instantly, activating his hardened skin ability and dodging as the tentacles struck violently. Wasting no time, he pushed forward, closing the gap between them. But before he could land a hit, one of the writhing limbs managed to catch him, sending him flying across the room. Groaning, he forced himself upright, using his bat to steady himself. His mind raced. What was that power? Even with his armor and hardened skin, the attack had nearly pierced through. Shaking off the pain, he readied himself for another round. Charging in once more, he used his bat to deflect the flailing tentacles, maneuvering swiftly around the battlefield. With a sharp pivot, he ran up the wall, using the momentum to launch himself through the air. His strike was precise, the bat stabbing straight into Aaron's chest. Suddenly, electricity crackled around him as he channeled his skill, sending a surge of lightning through the monster's body. Aaron convulsed violently, its entire form twisting in agony, before collapsing to the ground in a smoldering heap. Breathing heavily, Jin Hyuk scanned the aftermath. Amidst the wreckage, something caught his eye, an object lying near the monster's corpse. He approached cautiously, attempting to appraise it, but the result came up blank. Based on its shape and energy, he could only assume it was a magic stone. Without hesitation, he stashed it away and pulled out his communication device. Reaching out to Lucia, he quickly inquired if the girls had made it to safety. She swiftly confirmed that they were completely fine, but then she quickly dropped a bombshell, adding something quite concerning. A member of the infamous Tyrant Guild was actually with them. Jin Hyuk then quickly interjected, explaining that the man had completely betrayed his own guild and had been genuinely helping their cause. He strongly believed the guy was being completely sincere. Lucia then pressed him, inquiring about Orn's fate, to which Jin Hyuk casually, even confidently, assured her that situation had been absolutely taken care of. Plus, he'd even managed to score a rare magic stone in the process. Just as he was about to make his swift departure, Lucia urgently updated him on the current battlefield situation. The others were still locked in a fierce, desperate fight against those relentless Titan Guild members. But then something suddenly felt terribly wrong. The enemies had unexpectedly grown significantly stronger, fighting like they had truly gone completely berserk. Jin Hyuk's expression visibly darkened with concern. If the Titan Guild were to actually lose here, it would inevitably cause even bigger, more widespread problems. He urgently instructed Lucia to go and help them out. She quickly acknowledged the urgent request, her bow already shimmering, charging with powerful energy, before ending the call with a playful, teasing remark about how he now owed her a ridiculous amount of delicious sweets. For this, Jin Hyuk just chuckled lightly, stepping carefully over the grim remains of the fierce battle. But just as he cautiously moved forward, his expression sharpened, realizing he definitely wasn't alone. Without even turning, he calmly called out to the unseen presence. His voice was calm but firm. He knew someone was definitely there. A mysterious man then slowly emerged from the deep shadows, looking genuinely surprised that he had actually been sensed. Jin Hyuk narrowed his eyes intently. There was absolutely no need for any polite small talk. What was the true, underlying objective here? Was it the powerful orange stone, or was it him himself? The mysterious man simply smirked, admitting that he had originally come solely for the stone. But after witnessing Jin Hyuk in incredible action, he had completely changed his mind. Jin Hyuk's gaze darkened. That, he declared, was a grave mistake without warning. He charged forward, getting ready for another intense fight. The assassin lunged, aiming a deadly stab with his sharp knife. But Jin Hyuk skillfully slipped past the attack with absolute ease. Countering instantly, he struck out swiftly with his hand, only for the assassin to barely manage to block. Clearly taken completely aback by Jin Hyuk's incredible speed. For a brief moment, the assassin reeled. Too fast, far too fast for an S-rank hunter. That's when it clicked. This wasn't the first time. Jin Hyuk had reacted unnaturally fast, even back at the bar. Catching that poison dart wasn't just luck. Jin Hyuk suddenly hurled his bat, but the assassin sidestepped, watching as it embedded itself deep into the wall. Before he could react further, Jin Hyuk leaped into the air, calling his bat back to his hand. Like a magnetized weapon, the assassin barely had time to register what was happening before the bat came swinging toward him. Dodging at the last second, the assassin managed to land a counterattack, striking Jin Hyuk's back, but the hit was completely nullified by his armor. Frustrated, the assassin adjusted his strategy, aiming directly for Jin Hyuk's neck. But Jin Hyuk deflected him with a forceful shove. Without wasting a second, Jin Hyuk charged his bat with raw electricity, forming a concentrated lightning ball. Before hurling it straight at the assassin, the man barely managed to conjure a defensive shield, struggling to withstand the sheer force of the attack. Smoke filled the air as the battlefield crackled with energy. Through the lingering smoke, Jin Hyuk surged forward, his grip tightening around the bat. With deadly precision, he struck the assassin, the weapon crackling with lightning. As the force of the impact coursed through his enemy's body, one final blow into the fight, the assassin collapsed lifeless. Outside, chaos reigned. The Titan Guild members worked swiftly, burning the bodies of the fallen tyrant guild hunters to erase all traces of the battle. Amidst it all, Young-suk, now tending to his wounds, reflected on how close they had come to death. If that elf hadn't stepped in, they would have been wiped out. Her arrows sharp, swift, and relentless, had matched the caliber of a powerful S-rank hunter. A truly terrifying thought to consider. As the cleanup efforts continued on, a hunter then approached with an urgent update. All the wounded had been swiftly transported to the hospital, and every piece of evidence had been completely erased. Young-suk gave a curt nod in approval. Excellent. With the Tyrant Guild taken care of so effectively, it was time to move forward with a welcoming ceremony now. But just then, at that very moment, an unexpected arrival completely disrupted the moment. Dae-hyun, the Tyrant Guild member who had betrayed them, rushed in, his expression incredibly tense. There is truly no need for any words. His face alone carried such grave bad news. And sure enough, his warning was absolutely dire. The Tyrant Guild leader, along with their main forces, was already well on their way here. A chilling realization immediately settled in, as a white-haired man among them suddenly stiffened. The guild leader Chu, Wan Chio himself, was coming. A brief moment of silence followed, before the true weight of those words fully sank in. There was no chance of winning against someone like him. Before they could fully process that first report, another quickly followed, confirming that the Tyrant Guild hunters were approaching them incredibly fast. Time was running out, quickly assessing the situation. Young-suk made the only logical decision he could. Abort the operation. A retreat was their best option now. Turning to Dae-hyun, he then asked if the man would be coming along with them. But hesitation flickered in Dae-hyun's eyes before he firmly shook his head. Leaving now would make his defection far too obvious. He would stay behind and submit a false report instead. Young-suk studied him closely for a moment, before offering a nod of clear understanding. That was fine, but one thing was absolutely certain. An all-out war between the guilds had to be avoided. For now, before departing just yet, he issued one final urgent order. Pin everything on Hunter Kong Jin-hyuk. The informant remained completely silent, weighing the serious implications of that command. Meanwhile, in another location, the Titan Guild made their retreat as they ran. One of the hunters voiced his deep skepticism, questioning whether Young-suk's trust in Dae-hyun was wise. It was warranted, but Young-suk barely even gave him a look. It didn't matter at all. They just truly needed time, because sooner or later a full-scale war was completely inevitable. Dae-hyun stood perfectly still, his posture calm, but extremely alert. Just moments later, Lucia quickly approached him. Her piercing gaze was incredibly sharp, as she questioned if he was indeed the person Jean Hyuk had mentioned, without wasting any time. She swiftly told them to let Leighton immediately go. Jin Hyuk was eagerly waiting for them inside. The elf, ever so composed and collected, asked if the entire situation had been handled. Dae-hyun simply gave a quick nod of his head, stating firmly that he had taken care of the man, who had been following them, with that matter settled. He then turned towards Jin Hyuk, seeking an urgent update on their current predicament. Jin Hyuk wasted no precious time in explaining. Oren was definitely dead, but there was still a crucial loose end to quickly deal with. He suggested pinning everything completely on the attacker, making it look like he had bravely died in battle against Oren. The elf hesitated for just a brief moment, questioning if Jin Hyuk truly intended to frame this man. For everything, Jin Hyuk remained completely unbothered, and simply told him to check the diary. Inside were the names of all the previous victims of recent brutal serial murders. Their attacker wasn't just some random thug, not at all. He was the notorious Great Guild Killer, the one who had been shaking the entire public by fiercely targeting all the major guilds. If they made him the perfect scapegoat, no one would ever suspect a single thing. Without hesitation, Jin Hyuk turned to Dae-hyun, asking if he could competently handle it. The elf, still processing this daring plan, admitted that he didn't fully understand Jin Hyuk's unconventional methods. But if he was saying there wouldn't be problems later, then that was completely enough for him. He assured them that he would take care of the rest, and urgently urged them to leave right away. After all, the Tyrant Guild was already making its way there. They had roughly 2 precious hours before their arrival. Fortunately, the advance party had been nothing more than a mere illusion that he had cleverly created before parting ways. The elf then expressed his sincere gratitude, thanking Jin Hyuk for saving him and the others. Jin Hyuk, as usual, dismissed it casually, saying there was no need for thanks. Just a simple request to contact him once everything was over. As he walked away, Jin Hyuk couldn't help but smirk at the thought of what was about to unfold. The Tyrant Guild had suffered a massive blow, and once the other guilds caught wind of it, they wouldn't just sit back and watch. The guild's downfall was inevitable, and honestly, he was looking forward to seeing it crumble. Meanwhile, the scene shifted to Titan Guild Master Ko Sango and his secretary, deep in discussion over the latest developments. The situation had escalated beyond expectations, and it was no longer just a problem for the Titan Guild. It affected the entire guild system. Sango decided that the best course of action was to share the information anonymously. His secretary, however, pointed out that doing so would benefit other guilds, potentially putting Titan at a disadvantage. But the guild master wasn't concerned about that. If word got out that Titan guild was directly involved, the resulting guild war would be catastrophic. It was better to resolve the situation quietly than to waste time scheming for personal gain. With that, the secretary followed orders and anonymously leaked the information. Not long after, the news exploded with reports about the Tyrant Guild's criminal activities. People everywhere were talking about it, and arrests within the guild were already being made. Despite the overwhelming evidence, the Tyrant Guild refused to submit to the investigation. One person who wasn't taking it well was young Sook. Enraged, he cursed his guild master, blaming him for ruining everything. He wasted no time dialing his superior, demanding to know why they had given away the information anonymously. After all, they had done all the work, yet they got no credit. Now, those Ultron bastards were being hailed as heroes. The guild master remained unfazed. He explained that if they had dared to expose themselves, the formidable Tyrant Guild would have absolutely crushed them before any other guild could even begin to react. But young Sook, ever ambitious, was far from satisfied. He passionately argued that if his audacious plan to recruit an S-rank hunter truly succeeded, the mighty Tyrant Guild wouldn't stand a ghost of a chance. His superior, however, remained completely unconvinced. He questioned whether young Sook could honestly, truly guarantee them a resounding victory against the formidable Tyrant Guild master himself. And even more critically, what would become of the innocent civilians? Caught helplessly in the brutal crossfire, young Sook carelessly dismissed the concern, casually calling it a mere minor loss, compared to the immense power they would surely gain by completely absorbing the Tyrant Guild's strength. That was absolutely the final straw. The furious guild masters, voice filled with utter frustration and disbelief, furiously demanded to know what the true point of being a hunter was, if they couldn't even protect innocent civilians. Young Sook's so-called loyalty to the guild was clearly nothing more than his own selfish ambition, and he certainly wasn't fooling anyone. Before young Sook could even attempt to argue further, the call was abruptly cut off, leaving him absolutely furious. He violently slammed his fist into his monitor, absolutely seething with intense resentment. He knew that as long as his current guild master remained in power, the Titan Guild would simply never move forward. But he had absolutely no intention of just sitting around and simply accepting that fate without any hesitation. He quickly made another pivotal call. The voice on the other end sounded completely uninterested, already knowing exactly what this was all about. It was just another recruitment attempt. He wasn't remotely interested unless, of course, it was for the coveted position of Guildmaster. This time young Sook didn't hesitate, not even for a second. He passionately declared he would make it happen. He would give him the position. And with that, their next devastating move was decisively set in motion.